Going toward the sunset of time, I'm traveling the highway home, leaving this world of sin far behind. I'm traveling the highway home, traveling the highway home, traveling the highway home. Narrow the way, but thank God I can say I'm traveling the highway home. Well, old Satan said that I'd never be traveling the highway home. But when I resisted, he had to flee. I'm traveling the highway home. Yeah, traveling the highway home. Yeah, traveling the highway home. Well, narrow the way, but thank God I can say I'm traveling the highway home. Sometimes the road gets weary and long, traveling the highway home. But in my heart, there's always a song, traveling the highway home. Traveling the highway home. Traveling the highway home. Though narrow the way, thank God I can say I'm traveling the highway home. Jesus is my highway. Yes. Jesus is my highway home. Jesus is my highway home. Though narrow the way, thank God I can say Jesus is my highway home. Jesus is my highway home. Jesus is my highway home. Though narrow the way, thank God I can say Jesus is my highway home.
Yay!
Approaches are that's where the alignment is between Grim and I.
Okay, so what is bringing down the fourth wall project, Grim?
A terrible spell, and part of that spell, the humans have the campfire circuitry. For whatever reason, probably because it. So like, the television engages that, and like that's when your tribal elders are passing on information and stuff. So like those things are hijacked and make everybody feel like they're audience. And like if you watch characters in series that do break the fourth wall, and that's what the fourth wall I'm referencing when I do it. It's the wall that behind which you are audience and not a human. So
okay.
Hashtag paintball for Jesus at GrimGrizz. Hashtag break the fourth wall.
So like you do like break the fourth wall that doesn't exist and be like,
break the fourth wall a little bit.
you really helped me break the fourth wall. Like, you know, it's just people.
Good poetry is definitely always trying to break the fourth wall.
Always tried, as GrimGrizz says, to break the fourth wall to the degree that I can.
All right, welcome. It is Friday morning. Uh-oh, why do I have this little signal up here? connection is unstable. You're on Wi-Fi. I'm not on Wi-Fi. See, this is why Grim Grizz has his turn off that Wi-Fi. I am connected by Ethernet. I don't know why my connection might be unstable. If there's trouble with the transmission, let me know in the comments. This is our Friday live stream, and I got to church a little bit late. I did a levee walk this morning. I put that in the membership section. I'll hopefully be doing more of those videos. I'm trying to learn some new cameras, trying to capture more ideas, trying to figure out how to use the channel better. So those of you who are members, I threw 5 gifted memberships, threw 5 free memberships into the chat. You can pick them up. Did you watch Synod? No, I did not watch Synod, Jacob, not yet. I had a little confusion this morning with respect to Synod, and that's over on the membership. So Jacob, if you want to get into the membership, Jacob, go ahead and grab one of those free ones, and then you don't have to give Google anything. Google gives me 10 free ones each week. So Jacob doesn't want to give Google any money, even though Jacob is supporting Google by having a channel. And when you're going to rename that channel Jacob's Corner. And Yosef, I did get that Levinson book, and I'm really enjoying it. The tokens were taken too fast. Come on, Federecci, let's get going with it. What, are you sleeping here, Federecci? If anyone should be, don't just let, Moses take the wheel. Get in there, Jacob, and get those memberships. Maybe someone will gift some more today, and there'll be more for you to find, and you can see the levee talks. And and he was there first. That's right. I was watching Synod. Federecci is probably the only person of his, how could I say it, his theological camp that is obsessed with Synod. So wow. But welcome this morning. And what we're going to do this morning, like I said, I didn't have time to set up a lot, but you can tell from the thumbnail that I want to sort of go over videos that I had this week. And actually, I can use a minute to set some things up. And while I set some things up, I'm going to play some branding.
Guys, I'm back. Special thanks to you. I felt disabled not being able to play the branding. Really. Here's some of my favorite branding.
Camera set. Sound set. Roll it.
The laws of probability and chance indicate if an infinite number of monkeys are given typewriters and allowed to peck away for an infinite time, they will eventually produce all the world's great literature. But in the process, we find monkeys, like humans, also turn out quite a bit of absolute junk.
Action.
In voice recording, the essential quality we must strive for is intelligibility.
Cut. That was good. Good, very good.
Do you think it was me, CB? Do you think it was really me?
You were sensational, Pussycat. Just sensational.
We did it, CB. Another great shot.
Okay for sound?
Hello and welcome. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. It's so much easier when I can hide behind the branding, and I'm glad you're here for it.
There you go. I'm glad you're here for it. I just needed, like I said, part of the reason I start the branding usually before 10 o'clock is there's actually some things for me to do. I need to set up a screen so that I can keep an eye on the chat. I need to set up some things. And one of the things that I've learned from only 4 gifts have been received. How do I get one? I don't know, Steve. I don't know. So in terms of the membership, the lowest tier members, the Randos membership level is $3 a month. So there's there's a nice low tier for you. The no wait, no ads that's been sort of vacant lately is $7 a month. And then the support level is $25 a month. And with the support level, you get my cell phone number, and you can text me, and you can have a randos conversation. You can jump to the head of the line. I haven't been releasing a lot of randos conversations lately. I'll have some more coming up, but summer's sort of impacted, as I said on the Levy talk this morning. Yesterday was the last day that my wife had kids in class. And now today she's got to go to school and clean up classrooms and do some of those kind of things. And then her schedule frees up a little bit, which frees me from the dog a little bit. But in July, I go to Italy, and I will spend 3 weeks in Italy. And one of my sons is getting married there. And it's I'm hoping that I can make some good video footage for the membership section. I don't know if much of it will be of interest to the main channel section, but I'll definitely make some stuff for the membership section. And I have this little Osmo 3 pocket camera that I bought for the Levy talks and for the Italy trip, so that I can even better than a selfie stick, just sort of put on a mic and make a little video and keep the channel alive. Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. I can hear Gene Wilder sing that song there, T-Grog. Same age, take a look and you'll see into your imagination. There you go. Got a little bit of singing for you. PVK is becoming, rumors about my papal audience are grossly exaggerated. My daughter couldn't even get special Vatican tickets. So I don't know. I don't know if I'll be seeing the Sistine Chapel or not. Some of you who watch the channel know I've got issues with theological issues with some of the stuff. That's one particular thing that's there on the Sistine Chapel. I think that representing God as a big old man on a cloud sort of reinforces some ideas that shouldn't be reinforced. But let's talk about, let's see, I tried to get, let's see if I can pull up the, here it is. Oh, I don't want that there. I want that here. And then I want this. See, this is why we do the branding, so you don't have to see how the sausage is made. And there's that. This video this week that I made about the Tom Holland, Louise Perry conversation, and this whole thing about the question of Christianity. One of the things that really struck me in this was I never got a chance to sort of clip my conversation with Local Distance when he said, and I think he was right, it's all continuing to come around to Christianity, and people are fighting. I am not a Christian. You are a Christian. You see this with Richard Dawkins and Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and you see Jordan Peterson and Alex O'Connor trying to define what a Christian is. So what I'm going to do is I am going to drop the chat link. And if you saw the video, you remember the video, you have thoughts about this definition of Christianity, hop into the stream. I'm going to pin that link so they can find it. It's one of the little bugs. One of the little bugs that happens with the Grail Country streaming. So if you want to talk about, basically Tom Holland says that the 1960s, and it's really sort of 1955 to 1975. Up. We have a celebrity. We have a celebrity in the house, and it is our own. It is a man I am deeply indebted to for many of my ideas. And I have to say, Grim Grizz, your conversation with Clara was a masterpiece. That was a masterpiece. I thought it was. I thought all of your mastery was on display, and Clara too. Clara was great in it. She played along. She gave a degree of transparency that we're not used to seeing from her, because she's studying us, and studying means she's sort of hovers above and looks down at us little lab rats running around our little TLC corner. But
She's a case study of innocent academic lady gets sucked into a cult. They need to send backup. They need a third party advisor. That she's gone. She's done for. She's part of the corner already.
Speaking of that, Sam Transfigured Sam recommended that I listen to the Collins couple on leverage. Which, did you watch that one, Grizz? That was a fascinating video.
No, I caught a piece of the boy Collins on Voice.
Oh.
And that was enough of my Collins for a couple weeks.
All right, Grizz, did you come on to talk about the Tom Holland thesis, or did you have something else you needed to do?
First I wasn't sure if you had everything set up right. Do you have a tab open that you can present things from?
Yeah, I just had to set that up. So I've got a screen I can use that I can put things up, so I can,
So you can bring up the Estuary Northwest 2024.
Oh,
website.
yeah.
Because I heard you talking about what you're going to be doing in July, but after July, in September, you're going to be doing something else, and we've solidified the camping option for those in attendance to that, and I wanted to make that little announcement because there's only 25 of those slots available. Yes, that's it. The Encountering Face-to-Face Pacific or Estuary Northwest 2024.
There it is. Monday, I am having a conversation with Dr. Chris Green that we're going to sort of get things up to speed. Our own Karen Wong will be there. The Sophiologist Michael Martin will be there. Rafe Kelly will be leading us in I don't know if this is, I can't call it liturgical movement, but movement of some sort. And Graham Pardon, who I don't know, he will be there too. So yes.
Oh, I thought that was Graham Dempsey.
I think Northwestuary, big miss on the naming. You're right, Grizz. You should be making real money out there in marketing. You have a real gift for this stuff, Grizz.
Well, it's on the Shadow Cabal to come to me, become Shadow Cabal, and ask me questions. I can't. I'm too busy being me to market myself as a counselor. But that's September 12th through the 14th.
All right, Grim, what should the Chicago Estuary call itself?
Mestuary? No, I don't know. I'll have to think. I need to know more about it.
Well, what do you need to know that you don't already know?
All I know now is that it's in Chicago.
Well, we actually mean Des
I'm
Plaines,
busy pitching Northwestuary right now. Can you back off a minute, Sam? I did see you got some hot new fresh drop on John the Baptist. I'm into that. He's one of my favorite characters. But we have brand new camping options. Press that purchase tickets button there, Paul.
Tickets.
Now, all right. There's a form down there. There's three options you see. One is just to be there talkie with Paul. The Paul event is the basic ticket. The full ticket includes a barbecue on Thursday. It's
an expensive barbecue.
It's expensive barbecue food. I don't know. But to get the full ticket, and then if you want to camp, $100 for 3 days of lodging. We're providing tents and sleeping bags and pillows. There's only 25 of those slots. They cost $100. That's separate. You still got to buy the basic ticket if you want to. You can be a person that just camps. I don't give a. But
you see, the camping ticket seems like a deal. That's a pretty good price on lodging rental. The barbecue premium, though, that
hey, Nate Heil, the dude can cook.
All right, okay.
And if you have one of the exclusive 12 codes, you see where it says enter a password or discount code there, Paul?
Yep.
You click on that for me, would you, so they can see what happens? You click that, you put the secret of the 12 codes I have to give out in that box to attend the Grim Grizz birthday D&D game on Sunday for an additional $100. Okay, I feel I've plugged it well enough now.
Is that the end of the grift?
Yes, we can go back.
Wait, do you need? Are you grifting on your own channel? Do you need do you need monies to get to the event, Grizz? Or are you going to? I mean, what's the deal with that, Grizz?
Shadow Cabal memberships are always available. Every stream. Stop by. It's at the top of the link.
All
Blue
right.
Church card of the show. Deuces of hearts.
Oh boy.
Deuces of hearts. As far as that Christianity bit, you explicitly did not clip out my Eucharist nuke that solves the whole problem. So you're avoiding. You want to talk about other things about that. So I'll step out and let you do that obfuscation.
A Christian
right.
is someone
Thank
who
you.
takes the Eucharist. All right. So what if you want to take the Eucharist, but no one will give it to you?
You do it in remembrance of him in your own house, the same way you pray in your closet. Okay.
There he is. Sam, what do you have to say about the Tom Holland, this whole definition of Christianity? Because this obviously,
I was on Team Louis Perry in that conversation, where I felt like Tom is. You can't just say everything after Christianity is Christianity now. There has to be some sort of there that is being connected to the other things. There has to be some essence other than the word Christianity can't just mean AD on the time calendar. So, and I think that it has to somehow connect back to, traditional Christianity and the message of Jesus and the impact that had. And you can start doing things that are counter to that or are motivated by other concerns, and that's no longer Christianity. And I think that Luis was doing a better job of articulating that. And I get where Tom's going, that there's still some underlying Christian ingredients, even in things that aren't Christian. But if you have a mix of Christian ingredients and non-Christian ingredients, okay, I can still say that you're not Christian anymore. Manichaeism had a mix of Christian and non-Christian ingredients. I wouldn't call Manichaeism Christianity. And then Islam, that's a whole other thing. Islam has a huge importance for Jesus, allegedly. I wouldn't call Islam Christian. And I don't think that they would appreciate being called Christian by Tom Holland in that sort of way either. So I think that he needs to have a little bit more of a clarity of the essence of what Christianity is to be able to say that it's influencing things rather than that it's just AD on the time calendar.
All right. Steve, you've got some sound issues.
Oh, I still do?
Yeah, a little better now. What?
Oh, yeah, I had my TV on earlier.
Oh, okay. So what do you have to say about this definition of Christianity question?
Well, I was about to just type in the chat. How about the Nicene Creed?
Well, I haven't been following the news on the Southern Baptists. What is the Nicene Creed up for debate in the Southern Baptist Convention?
It was, and they voted it down. They voted not to add the Nicene Creed to their thing because Baptists don't like creeds. The reason was not that. Well, actually, the leader of the Southern Baptist Convention did say that he didn't like some of the language in the creed. I'm sure he considers himself a Trinitarian, but he said that some of the language is not biblical, which is true, and that endorsing a creed is endorsing the process and the ecclesiological institution that came up with the creed. I mean, if the creed is true, what do you need the creed for? And if it's not true, then you don't need the creed from a Baptist kind of sola scriptura. And there's a long history of Baptists not liking creedalism because it's Catholic and or Anglican, or Henry. You can blame the Pope or Henry VIII, because they're nonconformists in England. And so this is in perfect keeping with Baptist tradition to not like the Nicene Creed, and everyone else is freaking out that suddenly the Baptists are non-Trinitarian, which would be great, but even I know that that's not true. But that's sort of what's going on.
Interesting. So
yeah, I personally don't like the idea that I have to say a creed, and I'm happy to change my understanding about what that would mean and whether or not I'm happy about it. in the
Now,
future.
are you going to any church? Do you belong to a church, Steve?
I don't belong to one. I'm going to one.
Okay. And what kind of church is it?
They say the greed.
Oh.
Yeah.
and
you
do
know,
you have a
what I'm
priest or a
finding
pastor?
But this is what I'm finding. It's not like the door's closed and they say, "Hey, Steve, you've been here before, so you know better. Say the creed. Like, say Jesus is Lord." They're not doing that kind of thing. And saying, "Okay, if you're not going to say it, then stay outside." You know, they're not doing that. I don't think I've seen a stance like that on anything. I'm sure if I go in there and with like a boom box and I'm playing loud music, they'd ask me to leave. But that has, I think, more to do with my conventions of behavior than any specific belief. But I don't know. I don't know what they really think about it. But yeah, they say it. I mean, they claim like they wrote it, you know. But
are you going to a Catholic church or an
no, I'm going
Orthodox
to an
church?
Orthodox church.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. They like creeds. They like creeds. They like councils. They like Trinity. Although Orthodox are sort of all over the map. So
I say like they don't. What it sounds to me like is like what they don't like heresy. You know,
well, yeah.
So like, if they like creeds, maybe I know they don't like heresy.
Okay, all right.
I think that's my understanding. Again, I'm totally new to this kind of stuff, but it just seems like people said, "Well, you know, I think Jesus is more like this," and like, "Well, no, we haven't been saying that." And then like somebody 500 miles away gets a letter like 6 years later and goes, "Yeah, we haven't been saying this." And then like 40 years later, they all walk to a place. Some of them probably die walking there. And then they're talking and they're like, 3 months, 4 months. They're like, "Yeah, okay, I think you say this, which I think is dumb. You say that, which I think is dumb, but we can all agree on this." Yes.
All right.
Okay, let's write it down.
All right. Federecci.
I have a modest proposal.
Oh,
you never have modest proposals, Jacob.
Your proposals are always dramatic.
Being Christian is about the Messiah. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah,
that actually is one of your more modest proposals.
It is about a specific Messiah, and a specific understanding of what Messiah is, which you and I have talked about a lot.
You can discuss. We can discuss the details. My thing has been, I don't see Christians speaking about the Messiah or Jesus being the Messiah. A lot of them think Jesus Christ or Christ Jesus, that's his last name. The word
not wrong.
It's his Christian name. We can say that. No, not really. It's his
the word Messiah has been completely it's not something Christians talk about.
Jacob, Jesus redefined the word Messiah. That is deep in the purpose of the Gospels.
I know many Christians who disagree with you, including Father Stephen DeYoung.
In what sense, Paul, I'll push on you. In what sense did Paul redefine Freudian slip. In what sense did Jesus redefine the word Messiah?
The understanding, as Joseph said last week, the understanding of a Messiah would be someone who, like David, would, let's say, eliminate a contaminating threat and a physical threat against Israel, like the Philistines, and establish a dynasty that would rule and bring a golden age to Israel.
How is that different from anything Jesus said?
Yeah, isn't that sort of kind of still the deal?
Did Jesus kill Romans?
See,
no.
This is
Did David kill Philistines?
You
yes.
didn't say anything about kill. Like the word kill isn't part of. In fact, David was not the Messiah himself because he killed. So you're.
Well, he was a Messiah. Okay, here we go. Now we've totally lost
the Jewish brigade. And now
we've been invaded.
All right, I'm back on your team, Paul. I was previously on Jacob's team. I'll switch back to your team, Paul.
All right, David got in, and then Yosef. We got it. We got to deal with this.
So this is very important, is because there are 4 messiahs in Judaism, not 1, 4. Okay, and we're having a conversation about the Messiah. The Messiah that looks like David gets termed the Messiah, but there's 4 messiahs. And when Jacob is saying the Messiah is not like this, there's parts that he's disagreeing with you, Paul, that you don't realize is because you're only talking about David. And in Judaism, there's the thing that I would say is that Jesus is way, way more obviously the other 3 messiahs than he is David.
Interesting.
And so part of that disagreement, Sam, I was just commenting on this, Jesus as priest is the entire function of the book of Revelation.
Yeah.
Is him as the high priest bringing about the Day of Atonement, which is Yom Kippur.
So
That's
priests are
that's what
messiahs
Revelation
too?
is.
Messiah
Well,
has a priestly role?
Only in Qumran.
You get
Hold on.
anointed. Yeah.
Wait, the 4 craftsmen. What are you talking
Yeah.
about? 4
Right, there's-
craftsmen. Yeah, so the 4 craftsmen are Melchizedek, the righteous priest, the prophet. What it is? What do you want me?
There's 2 different traditions there, but potentially.
Okay, it is a priestly Messiah, sometimes referred to as Melchizedek, referring to the one who brings about the year of Jubilee. Yes?
Not the Jubilee thing is pretty out there, but yes, sometimes the priestly Messiah is understood as Melchizedek. Sure.
Okay, then you have Joseph or Ephraim, sometimes called Yeshua because he's to look like Joshua, who's the son of Nun. Then you have the prophet sometimes called Moses, sometimes called Elijah, depending on which piece of literature, and then David. But because David is referred to as the epitome, the Messiah, Paul, when you say the Messiah, there's 4 messiahs, and sometimes you don't even realize that Jesus is, like the Christian literature, is making direct reference to these other messiahs, and we just don't notice them because we're only looking for David. So that's a blind spot on us.
That's a great
And again, it's not.
Correct
me.
Okay,
Well,
Yosef.
just because you mentioned me, what I was saying last week, I want to be very clear. It's important that the Davidic Messiah is not the Davidic Messiah, right? This is a misnomer. He's the son of David. He's supposed to be based on Solomon, not David. Because the Davidic Messiah is not the son of David Messiah. I'm not going to use Davidic. The son of David Messiah is not allowed to be warlike. He's not allowed to participate in the wars of Gog and Magog. He's not allowed to kill. All of that's off limits. He is not a militaristic Messiah. The Davidic Messiah is not a military Messiah. He's not really based on David, but on Solomon. That is a really important and critical point here. Because it's not that.
Solomon,
it's not
David
that Jesus
was never
is changing.
referred to as the son of God, but Solomon was. Solomon was the son of
Get
God.
thee behind me! Save versus topic derailment from Christianity into Judaism. Survivalist with the 15. Socialist with the 13. Lovers of wisdom, 16. You're all going to make it. You hard folks don't get suckered into it. Even though you got a 5. Indigo kids, you got a 7. This is about how to define Christianity. Get back to it. It's Jesus. Let's talk about Jesus, our Messiah who resurrected from the dead. Come on.
Sam, are you okay with the Apostles' Creed? Is that good for you?
Yeah, I like the Apostles' Creed. It's genuinely old. The first person to record the full Apostles' Creed in history was a Unitarian who was being persecuted by Athanasius. So I'm perfectly fine with the Apostles' Creed. Fun facts that people didn't know.
Oh,
It's like that little clip that, getting back to the video that I was making the video from for the video and the topic, it's like the Glenn Scrivener got that thing for, it's like, it was like the Greek. Everything is Greek for Sam. Everything is Unitarian. Democracy,
Everything
Unitarian.
That's true, though. That one is true.
Everything is based.
I mean, what's the first sentence of the Apostles' Creed, Paul?
I believe.
In what? In who?
In God.
Who's God? God who?
God the Father.
Creator of
Made the
heavens and
the
earth. I rest my case.
There you go. All right. So anything else on this Messiah thing? Because Grizz is right. We're supposed to be talking about this definition of Christianity, which Yosef very much got into before when we talked about that. So anything back on topic?
Just to be clear, the word Christ is the Greek of Messiah.
Yes, anointed.
It means to anoint.
Yes.
There is a procedure there which Christians have forgotten.
Well,
and it's important because the king, the priest, and the prophet do all get anointed at various points in the Bible, right? They're all positions and roles that are anointed positions with the anointing oil. Like it's not just it's a real physical ritual associated with it.
It's one of the reasons why all four gospels agree that Jesus was anointed before he is crucified.
Speaking of John the Baptist, go watch my channel. Excellent video about John the Baptist, who anointed Jesus, and that is why Jesus is the Christ. That's when it happened.
And Heidelberg Catechism, prophet, priest, and king. Jacob's really looking forward to trolling my Heidelberg Catechism lessons once they actually do them.
But we do have to get back to one part of this, right? Which is that the stress of making Jesus into the high priest comes more from not what became the line of tradition that became modern Judaism, but really is associated with two other sects of the Second Temple period, right? It comes from the Hasmoneans and the Herodians, honestly, which was what they become, and then also the Qumran sect. Both of them, so the Qumran really strongly stressed two messiahs, the kingly and the priestly, but they did think they were two separate people, and they also had a separate role for Elijah, which John the Baptist might fulfill, so that kind of maybe breaks it off for the Christian. But they say that these two messiahs are going to be fulfilled in Jesus, right? It's not a separate priest and king. But that initial argument actually comes from the Hasmoneans, who say, hey, the kingship is not limited to Judah, and we can be priest kings. And this is a huge debate in the Second Temple period. And this is what, the rabbis, the proto-rabbis, they don't exist yet, but the proto-rabbis, which exist as part of the Pharisees, are really protesting and when they write a lot of polemics against the Hasmonean kingship as it gets more and more problematic, is this combination of power, because they understood that this was supposed to be a system of checks and balances. In fact, the English conservatives of the 17th century were looking at these texts and understanding, hey, in kings, there's supposed to be a set of checks and balances. The priest is supposed to check the king, and the prophet's supposed to check the priest and the king, and then the people serve their own role in that, right? But here, when you combine everything into one, it collapses the system fundamentally, right? It's a fundamentally different political theology, and that's a really important point.
All right, great point. Okay, anything else on why you have new atheists and secularists and Christians debating the definition of Christianity in public? And it was so interesting how John Vervaeke sort of, went after sort of Christian nationalism and cultural Christianity, while you've got a guy like Richard Dawkins. Well, let's slip into the next topic then, and I won't necessarily erase the board.
So the topic I have is how do you get a gift membership?
You're not picking topics here, Steve.
Steve, there's still time. Click on the 50 sign in the screen.
I have. So that's what I don't understand. Is there what is the secret of the button?
Oh wow! Did Rick give another fifth? Thank you, Rick. Wow, Rick. Thank you very much. That's awesome.
Is there an explicit mechanism to receive it? Because I don't get it.
You will need to be logged into YouTube, and you might need a credit card on file with YouTube.
I have that. Oh, maybe because it's expired date, so I'll try updating that.
Try updating that and see if you can get a membership. So, all right, and I'm sure Grim Grift will probably forgive the pause in the topic, failure to fulfill the thumbnail and the title for the sake of grift. So,
was that not Christian of me?
No, it was very VNA of you to ask to get more information so the grift can be fulfilled. So,
yeah.
All right. Ayan Hirsi Ali and Richard Dawkins, Atheism as AIDS in the Public Square. What New Atheism did is actually weak. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, Paul, that is, I think, incredible, because the way that she was phrasing it was related to getting vaccinated, and you went in a completely different direction, which is the notion of AIDS, the idea of something that it's a system we're supposed to have that has been attacked. And I think this is meme magic. Okay. This is where that idea is so brutal, but so quickly cuts to the point of what people need to understand about it. Is that atheism is AIDS.
I look forward to the CDC properly informing everyone watching this video whether it's related.
Let's see how many cards we can catch on the bottom, or which of the cards they put. You know,
Guys,
about the Twin
climate
Towers?
change? I really think that atheism is the climate change of the public square.
We're not
9/11.
Climate change, AIDS.
It's the building 7 of the Epstein.
You're gonna get me. You're gonna get a content strike on this channel. You guys keep this up. It's a heck of a thing that Grizz mentioned in the Tammy Peterson. She got a copyright strike for just a topic, not even copyrighted material.
All right, so you did see I did the commentary on that for you.
I did. Thank you, Grizz. I can't cover it all, so I really appreciate everybody in the corner.
What happened to Michaela? What did she get a strike?
No, Tammy. Little Johnny Blackbill goes on with Tammy Peterson in the Sistine Chapel branding that Paul hates so much. And Tammy got a strike for having a Holocaust victim talk about the thing that the certificate of vaccination identification cards. That experience, and that I covered that for Paul. You can see my version on the live channel called the stream.
How's that a copyright strike?
No. It's a content strike.
Oh, a content
community strike where you have to get reprogrammed and take training. But it turns out you have to like come back on these streams to make it not be on your channel anymore. So there's that.
I think her husband should go with her to the reprogramming. I still would pay money to watch someone try and reprogram Jordan Peterson. That would be absolutely hilarious.
Just his reaction to the programming would be comical.
All right, there he goes again. Jacob.
If you haven't watched my discussion with T-Grog, it is one of the best I have ever had.
I've heard it is stellar, but I have not gotten to it yet.
And I was in exorcist mode. I was trying to exorcise him of his new atheism. And I think, honestly, there's a lot of people who are going to need to catch up to the last 5 years of the Jordan Peterson sphere. And that's just what's happening.
Yeah. How is that on the topic, Jacob? Instead of just promoting your channel? Why haven't you renamed your channel Jacob's Corner? That's a great name for your
There's
channel.
a little kid who has Jacob's Corner and he's really cute.
Jacob's Ladder is probably already taken.
I'm not gonna take that little kid's.
Well, that's a good reason. Steve, are you back to complain that are you having a boomer problem where you can't work your computer? Is that what this is about? You're also muted.
I'm Gen X, first of all, so
it's
don't like assume my generation, but also
I misgenerationed you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's something I'll be able to let go of, but like it seems like there would be a way for it to happen and work, and I have not found it. And I know how software works.
I can't do technical support in the middle of my live stream now.
I'm not asking you. I'm asking the chat. I figured somebody might be able to say
you can't. You shouldn't come on the channel here and take up the. Anyway, all right, Steve, go figure it out. All right. Anything else on Ian Hersey Ali and Richard Dawkins and atheism as AIDS in the public square?
I thought that was a great analogy, and it's using Dawkins' own sort of language and ideas. Oh, here we go. We're streaming on the wrong.
Oh, can you hear me?
This. I hear you, Hank. I hear you.
What is going on here? I can't hear you.
This is better than a phone call.
Oh, you need to do technical support for Hank too.
No, is he? It's.
I'm dying. I can't hear anybody.
Steve, I told you, Steve. Figure it out. Come back when you figured it out. All right, Hank, what say you? Besides join the Catholic Church, we already know, you're all excited because you left evangelicalism.
I think he has no audio. I think he can't hear us.
All right. There he goes. Figure it out, Hank. Figure it out.
You with your boomers, I tell you.
Oh, the thing is, I'm always doing technical support at Living Stones for my builders. I mean, Pastor, I'm having a problem with the computer. Could you come home and fix it? They said,
I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
All right.
All right.
Can you hear me,
Hank?
Paul?
Well, yeah, I hear you just fine. What do you have to say about the topic?
I was coming in here as a Catholic who's been trashed by Transfigured over here. Again, you know what? We need a magisterium, okay? Because everybody's got an opinion, and there's only one person with the right opinion.
Grim Grizz is going to take away my VNA privileges if you guys don't stick to the topic.
What's the topic? And who cares?
The topic is Ayaan Hirsi Ali and Richard Dawkins, atheism as AIDS in the public square.
Oh,
That
Richard
is the
Dawkins.
topic.
Okay, hold it. Here, this is easy. Richard Dawkins is passé. Next.
True. Okay,
Next.
Hank, do you think new atheism was a virus like AIDS that sort of cleared out the public square of sort of its Christian secularity, so that in England they're worried about Islam, in America it was wokeism, but wokeism seems on the decline now, and the question is, did new atheism sort of work as an exorcist to clear the house of things so that 7 new worse things could come in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, what's the next topic, Paul?
No. We still. I'm trying to have
we
got to
move this
here.
on. So
we don't
want Grim to get
can't work his
activated.
thing. Rod Hare, please bring sanity to this moment.
Oh God! Don't make me do that. Well, I think this is related to this topic. Because you just alluded to it a minute ago about Vervaeke's comments about cultural Christianity, and he seemed kind of allergic to that idea. And he didn't say Christian nationalism, or might have, but he also said cultural Christianity specifically,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it seems to me that that's kind of the theme that the Ayaan Hirsi Ali issue is really about, and it as somewhat peripheral to this whole intramural conversation. I kind of wonder, what's the consensus, pro or con? Do we like it or don't we? Is it good to be a cultural Christian or not? I listened to Peugeot talk, and he seems to be strapping in for the apocalypse and waiting for the inevitable, shrinking and dwindling of Christianity, and sees that almost as inevitable and maybe even healthy for the church, perhaps, maybe. I don't want to attribute too much to his beliefs. And then there's this whole other more sort of triumphalism, like, we're winning, we're converting the atheists. And it seems like these are two very different ideas. And so which is it? Is it good that cultural Christianity is ascendant or not?
What was interesting to me about the Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Richard Dawkins video is where they ended, because they both basically ended saying, we need a robust, pluralistic public square. But that seems, they sort of ended up where Tim Keller was, that requires the formation of the populace around sort of liberal Christian virtues to actually maintain what the West has enjoyed, which, and again, that seems to be that's sort of the charge against Ali by Dawkins, that you're doing this for other reasons besides confessional Christianity.
As
Yeah,
if he
is that why
gets to
she
decide what a
chooses
good
to believe?
motivation is.
When she said, I choose to believe, is it because I'm less likely to be beheaded if everyone believes in Jesus Christ?
I wonder if this actually attaches to the
he didn't
next-
follow through on that, and I felt like that would have been a valid question from Dawkins. It's like, okay, Ayaan, if you say that you choose to believe, why do you choose to believe?
Well, that's always the fear. The boogeyman that's brought up is that if confessional Christianity or institutional Christianity takes the primary space, then there will no longer be religious pluralism, even though it's been in, let's say, Protestant Christian space that has brought religious pluralism to the world. David, you wanted to say
pluralistic Protestant space, though.
Yeah, pluralistic Protestant spaces. Yes, that has tolerated Unitarians too.
I don't know
because they invented it.
We invented it. Yeah.
So
but
go ahead, David.
Apparently, they did studies, and people who were atheistic were less likely to be able to pick up on agency. So let's just say you were designing a situation that had a human control to it. An atheist would be less likely to notice that things were actually set up that way. So, and I actually did this with a bunch of friends because I was trying to write a character. And so the example that I used is, and I asked a bunch of my atheist friends, someone is making SpaghettiOs, okay? Or alphagetti. They spill the alphagetti or alphabet soup or whatever. How many words or how big of a word needs to be spelt out for you to be convinced someone is talking to you through the soup? And my atheist friends all said the same answer. No amount of words would convince me. I would just believe I was crazy. Okay? So especially as we're getting into the IFS stuff, I think that one's ability to notice a mind, to notice someone trying to communicate is like, when I first became a Christian, I still experienced doubt, and I said, I don't care. I don't care how I feel. I'm still a Christian. I'm still heading in this direction because my feelings don't determine whether or not something is actually happening. I don't care if I notice.
And this impinges on the public square conversation. How, Dave? You want to clarify that?
Well, because atheism is actually based on a notion that whether or not I am convinced is enough to admit its reality. You can actually say something is, like, my wife has spiritual experiences that I don't, and I actually just say, it's probably happening even though I don't see it. Even though I don't experience it, I actually submit to its existence. And I feel like Ion's answer could still exist within Christianity and not just a functional answer, but that, look, I'm not experiencing it, I still say it's real.
Okay. All right. Christopher, you haven't had a chance to talk yet. Are you on the topic here, or are you trying to click a membership?
No, I wasn't clicking membership. I was going to say that I haven't watched that video, but the title seems essentially correct. So, and also I was going to just pop in and say hi since I had time to today. So,
thank you, Christopher. Thanks for coming in and saying hi.
Paul, I'm not quite satisfied because
keep going, Rod.
One of the, we all appreciate T-Grog. I wouldn't necessarily, take the approach he's taken, but I'm sympathetic, right? Because some of the things he's raising, like one of his, I think, most valid complaints is getting someone to define what a Christian is. If it's anything, well, then what is it, right? And Sam, you said earlier, and I from the very first time I sort of was exposed to Holland's, sort of premise, right? It was like, well, so you're describing the march of Christianity through Western history, but when your options are either say these words or we're going to cut your head off or burn you at the stake, well, a lot of people end up saying the words. So what have you really proven, right? You've proven something that Christianity won, let's say, but that sounds a lot like cultural Christianity. That sounds a lot like Ian Hershey Ali's point, right? It's like, I want to be on the side of the winners, right? And so everybody claims it as long as you're winning, but that doesn't sound much like the Christianity that Joe was talking about when he's sort of, preparing for the apocalypse. These seems like two very different ideas.
Okay, good. Mark D. Parker. I almost said Palmer. Parker, what do you have to say to this topic? You have to unmute first there, Boomer.
I had to find my arrow, Paul. I got two screens over here, and it was a mistake when you're over 60 to have two screens going at the same time. So what's the question? Is atheism is of any use?
Did atheism function as AIDS and sort of empty the public square so that worse viruses?
I'm still reassembling my skull after it exploded over the whole Nicene Creed discussion. So completely different discussion for another time.
Actually, it's not. Mark.
It's not.
We're not
I'll tell you why it's not.
Hank, we're not going back.
I'm Church of Christ, and I'd like to bring it back to my church. Let's put that.
Christ before Christ.
What did you have to say to the topic?
To the topic, sir. I actually think that new atheism was very beneficial because it forced Christians to take some philosophical questions that are problems for Christianity seriously. Specifically, say the one, for example, would be the problem of suffering. Many Christianity I grew up with, evangelical Christianity I grew up with, dismissed it to the point of emotional abuse. And I think guys like Hitchens forced us to take it seriously. I think, and it's that has deepened the thinking of many current Christians. I don't think you'd have the corner without Hitch, frankly.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Thank you. Chad, were you just going to keep us grounded with your blue collar job, or did you actually have something you wanted to add to this?
Well, I finally have something to say. Well, at least a question. How does it get transmitted? Like, was it a blood transfusion? Was it like sexually transmitted?
Yeah, it's definitely sexually transmitted.
Like it's just like I'm thinking about this because, or is it like cultural assumptions of like say folks in the 80s and 90s, they would like say maybe look over there and see somebody who doesn't look masculine. Perhaps you might look. We have assumptions about how somebody's sexual orientation. Then I heard rumors that people would think they would automatically assume somebody had AIDS because they might be gay or something. So I'm wondering how this analogy plays out that way.
It's sexually transmitted though, Chad. Is like I had a lot of experience of people who wanted to sleep around, and the price for sleeping around was abandoning their beliefs. So it is sexually transmitted.
Yeah,
wow. Well, I mean, when you look at the graphs of like church attendance and belief in same-sex marriage, they're like perfectly anti-correlated. So I do think that a huge part of this is the change in sexual morals.
Well,
so,
right. That's
Sam,
actually a question I had.
Specifically, gay sex spreads atheism. Sorry, go ahead, Chad.
Well, I mean, this was kind of like a question that I had with somebody else who had. Like they went to like whatever that was, Burning Man, like 5 times, and they were into yoga and stuff. And I was wondering how those kinds of values, like what came first, the sexual desires or their spiritual desires, and which shaped which. And so, anyways, I kind of got off track. I'm sorry. Bye.
Well, this gets into back sort of to the Tom Holland New Religion, because Tom's thesis is that, again, Christianity. For Steve, Christianity got forked in the 60s, and see, my thesis is that this is always happening, that Christianity is always trying new variants. And some of these variants wind up being dead ends. Others of these variants wind up being integrated and strengthening the religion. And then the video that I didn't mention, the Silk Road video, that Christianity has actually been doing this with other religions throughout the history of the world. Christianity has impacted other religions. Other religions have sort of impacted Christianity. And when I get to the fourth topic today, we're going to talk about market forces, because I think some market forces are really impacting the development of churches right now. So any last things on the new religion or the new atheism?
Maybe perhaps new atheism is spread by masturbation. Not a joke.
That goes back to what Paul was saying about the 60s.
Sam's feeling good about himself because he feels that biblical Unitarian was Unitarianism was proven by an interaction with the inestimable Beth Moore and Kristen Dumais on Twitter.
All right.
So I mean, no. I mean, by all means. I mean, if we're going to bring up ad hoc,
Well,
like
what did
silliness
Sam
like
Harris
this,
and Jordan Peterson talk about on stage?
hey, you know what? All I'm looking for is, can we have Sam Kinison on here?
All right. I am taking Sam and Hank off because I'm starting to clear the deck because we're going to have a new topic. Rod, last words on this topic if you have them.
I'm still not satisfied, but I'll lurk and see if there's another opening.
All right, sounds good. David, last words on this topic.
Well, I jumped on thinking that there was a connection between this topic and the next one. Atheists being unable to see the mind, and now you're getting into IFS.
So hang on. We're going to do the IFS thing. So just stay in there. I'm going to take you off the screen. Christopher, last words on this topic.
Not really. I was going to tangent and say that if you're talking about a Christian nationalism, I would plug Doug Wilson. So other than that, no.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Christopher. Steve, you get truly the last word on this topic. Sorry, Mark. I don't know why I called you Steve. Mark, otherwise known as Steve by Paul. Early Dimension.
I'm wondering. Sam's comment makes me wonder. I want to be funny. Question the wisdom of my humor.
Just be honest.
Okay. So how's he managing the hair on the palm of his hands issue? Is he using LASIK? Did he choose LASIK, or does he shave regularly? Just curious. I mean, you bring up the subject. It's obviously an issue. So let's should we do this in a private session?
Ask Jordan Peterson about on stage. Why is that a God who would care about you if you masturbated or not? I'm not joking. I
see the connection, Sam. I see the connection.
And
so this is a Jordan Peterson reference, not a theological concern of yours.
Well,
this is
both.
Chad asked how it is it sexually transmitted, and I think Sam made a good point. Sort of, yeah.
So okay, so it's okay. So if sexual. Well, you could ask the former president of Liberty University.
Well, okay. Let's land the plane on this topic. I'm going to take you both out. I'm going to bring two people in for a reason. Because in some ways they have Steve has sort of become the new Andrew, and yes, he's become the new Andrew.
Wish I knew what that meant.
Well, what that means is I like to keep an open room. Part of the difficulty of having a larger channel is that there's a lot of people who want to come in. And so one of the things I'm probably going to have to train people in is sort of the fishbowl methodology, which is you want to come in and you want to make your point and then you want to leave. And Andrew likes to come in and eat cereal and walk to class and brush his teeth. And now we have that sort of with Chad. But Chad's working. Chad's doing work. Andrew's just doing personal hygiene. So, Andrew, did you actually have something you wanted to say before I take you off screen? See. Here's my point. Yeah, so, all right, here we go. Okay, new topic: IFS parts and spirits above. I know. I wouldn't be surprised if Rod wants in on this. And Sam always wants in. So I'm going to start this deck with this crew. Okay, IFS, parts below and spirits above. And I really tried to make an AI image of sort of a human being as something of a sieve. But AI couldn't really get what I was going at because, and in some ways, David colonized me by that little clip that I played in there, which I thought was really good. And so my talk with John Vervaeke yesterday was on John's channel, so I don't have the recording, so that's why it's not in No Wait, No Ads. So y'all are going to have to wait till it goes through the Vervaeke process until it comes to light. But okay.
I actually do have some thoughts on this.
I figured you would.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't that wasn't my primary motivation for getting on here, but probably 12, 15 years ago, I first got exposed to it and did a fair amount of research and reading on IFS.
How old is it, Ron? How old is IFS?
It's old. The
Really?
Schwartz, I think is his name. Yeah. It's been around.
He said 40 years.
Yeah, it's like maybe I was going to say the 80s, but mostly kind of a fringe discipline, and it's kind of part of the field of psychology that you kind of you invent a discipline, you come up with names and words for it, you write a book or two, and then you start doing seminars, and a few who do that actually get traction and sort of turn it into a whole career, right, and sort of affect the discipline. And so it's been kind of on the periphery for quite a while. But the reason why I did a semi deep dive on it was mostly in the context of it being kind of a treatment modality, right? More in terms of its utility, its effectiveness, right? Because a lot of what you're doing when you're sort of thinking about thinking, or you're thinking about your internal experience, is you're trying to come up with a framework that that has some kind of explanatory power. Let's put it that way, right? And so, like, I'll just use a quick little example. Like, imagine late at night, it's dark. A family of six driving down a dark country road with no lights, pouring down rain, thunder. It's a dramatic and scary experience. And suddenly, a tire blows out, and it's pouring rain, and the four kids in the back are sleeping, and all of a sudden, everybody's alert and scared. And one version of the story is that dad freaks out, says, "Oh my God, what are we going to do? No cell phone service," and he starts to panic, right? And then the whole family starts to flare up, and one kid starts screaming, another, right? Another version of the story is dad says, "Everybody sit tight, I got this." 10 minutes later, you feel the car get jacked up, you hear some tires, and the trunk closes, and he's back in, and off you go, right? And the point of thinking about it as a family is recognizing, and that was his premise. He was working with families, and he was noticing that in family dynamics there were these sort of repeatable phenomena where each person seemed to have a part to play. Another good metaphor is like one of these mobiles that hangs over a child's crib, right? There's a balance there, and unless one person stops playing their part, and all of a sudden the whole thing comes out of balance, right? So it's more like in a way of thinking about families and how they interact with each other, and those dynamics that can be quite durable and sometimes pathological. He took that same idea and said, well, you have all these different aspects to your personality. So the extrovert, the piano player, the creative person, and just sort of thinking of the different dimensions of your personality, and perhaps there's one that always gets activated or triggered by a certain trigger, right? And then stands up and starts stamping their feet and creating all kinds of drama while the rest of the family just cringes and waits for it to be over, right? And so his idea was to sort of activate these other parts of your personality, almost like a orchestra conductor, calling on the bassoon, calling on the drum, right? And sort of, what does the situation call for? Let's bring that aspect of our personalities to this particular situation. That's, a very kind of basic layman's attempt at an explanation of it. And from that point of view, I actually thought it was a really useful way of thinking about the human psyche. Yeah. All this demon stuff, like, that's a whole other thing.
No, and the demon stuff is unusual and exceptional. I think that's really important to point out, because the funny thing about demons is they cause fear and confusion, and they seem to draw a lot of attention to themselves in weird ways. So, no, I think that's a great, and my conversation with John focused a lot on IFS and some of the peculiarities, and especially the question of modality, because you've got IFS as therapy and implications of IFS on ontology. And so that's really where it got quite interesting for John, especially with respect to Hermes and that whole conversation. So, Eric, what, David, did you want to
I wanted to throw in two little bits. Number one, are we okay if we refer to Hermes as a daemon instead of demon? Like, where the language of demon used in the New Testament, where it's specifically referring to a spirit, and within that culture would have been more easily accepted, because there's some people very upset using the term demon, whereas when Paul used that term in the New Testament, it would have been a little bit more neutral. Is daemon, because I think that
there are even
opens up
some positive uses of daemon in the New Testament that aren't demonic beings. I can't remember, but I do think there are even a couple uses of that word within the Greek New Testament that aren't intoned with satanic subservience.
Or an Elohim.
Yeah, so I think
in the Old Testament.
Yeah, Elohim, God, Spirit. Like I think it'd be good if we actually used terms that could be fallen, like could be positive, could be negative, because it can't just be neutral. We need things where some people will raise eyebrows. And number two is I've been thinking a lot more about positive possession, which is I think the whole programs thing that you really liked, Paul, is this idea of like, when I first became a Christian, I sometimes felt like I was actually outsourcing my thinking, outsourcing my ideas on a lot of things, where I would just be like, okay, whatever the Christians are doing, and I'll figure out how I actually internally say yes to that. And it felt, Paul speaks of being possessed, i.e. being a slave to righteousness, right? Like I'm not always owning myself.
Right. And your programs thing is helpful too, because we all do this. Because here's a topic over here that I really don't know enough about and I haven't really learned much about, but I'm living in a community of trust. So I basically take that program off the shelf and I plug it in when I'm asked about it. And this is what we do in education. You do it in Christian formation. You do it in doctrinization. You're just taking programs and you're running them through. And then someone will maybe stop you and say, well, can you explain that? And what you find when you talk to people is, especially Christian people, and you ask them something, like when the Jehovah's Witnesses come to the door, they come to the door, they have their little spiel. And then I pause and say, can you explain that? No, they've just been, all they have is that program. And then when you start to like push on some other things, then suddenly when they have to start making stuff up, well, you learn a lot about what's there, what kind of things are really operating under the system. And I think part of what's happening is we are moving into a model of human beings that integrates a lot more of this, because some of these things off the shelf are what I got from mom, what I got from this. And some of these things are ideologies and things that are flowing through social media. And so you begin to get a anthropology of human beings that, well, it's not, and John and I actually talk about this. You can't eliminate a self. And this is a really interesting point with John and this whole IFS thing. He's got some real questions about it, but especially the question of the self. Because Christians will say, well, we have a soul is sort of our self. There's an entity that is going to, in fact, be going through time, having all of these programs streaming through it, both spirits above and programs below, and things from our grandparents and parents. And so but this model, it seems like this model of a human being is probably going to have real implications for a lot of things going forward.
Quick insertion.
Yes.
In psychology, you might hear the term executive function quite a bit. And I think that's a fairly good analog for the idea of the self, at least in the context of this IFS model, right? You're kind of trying to conduct.
And they have, so John went into some of those things. I have to learn a lot more about this, because they have to then sort of account for, okay, who's moving my lips right now? What's moving my lips right now? Because if you sort of, if the self sort of dissolves in this stream of parts below and spirits above, you're going to have a meaning crisis, because you're going to dip into nihilism, because all I am is basically a beige PC running programs off the shelf. And then, that is basically, I think, the essence of the meaning crisis. But Eric, you came in.
Yes. Yeah. So I just wanted to add to this conversation. So I think one thing that is forgotten about quite often is how the thing we're all talking about, the thing that's making the parts, the thing that's making you, is your imagination. It's this unconscious part that everybody has, and we don't really know anything about it. We just know that it makes things, and that it, we assume people have different access to it, and some people tend to just overflow with creativity and ideas, and other people have, they claim that they have no imagination. But what people discover with things like IFS and other things is that once they are guided or shown a way to engage with that part of themselves, then all of this creativity just flows out of them, and these parts that we're imagining, and they have all this content and all this information is all, was all there in the background that we just didn't know about. And but that thing is not like a computer that is like loaded into you at birth. It is this creative, organic thing that we don't really know anything about, and we all just experience it. And I don't see how that's nihilistic. That's kind of like the door to the mystery. Like, if you really want to, study your own mind and engage with that uncreated, that unconscious part of you, that is where you start. And you can do it in a myriad of different ways. And all of these different IFS and meditation and things like that are becoming more and more popular are because that is the successful things that people are finding to engage with that unconscious part of themselves.
Okay. No, that's good.
That's such an excellent point. And that's why I emphasize the idea of explanatory power, because in a sense, you could say religions have served a similar function, which is give me a framework within which I can try to make sense of so much that doesn't make sense or is a mystery or is confounding, right? It mostly as a modality, it has that utility. To go further with it, I think would probably be, maybe idolatry.
Sam,
yes, I think there's.
Go ahead, Derek.
I was just saying that's the difference between worshiping the thing the imagination creates and, I have discovered this part of myself that's, telling me I should obey it, or that I need to do X, Y, and Z, instead of recognizing the more mysterious thing is that something was created to begin with, and that creative thing is a evolving and changing thing, just like all life is. And idolatry is when you want to concrete it. It's like, it is this. I know the answer. It is not changing. It is always this. And then you worship that image of it instead of the creative thing that created the image.
Good. Sam, you jumped in there, and I don't know if you had a chance to make your point on this.
I think a lot of what Eric was saying was really good. That I think that IFS is dangerous for the reason that it's encouraging plural personality within yourself. Like, I appreciate what Rod was saying about how this sort of morphed from family systems psychology, where you're trying to help members of a family process their, perhaps unhealthy interactions with each other, and you can talk to dad and mom and the kids and stuff like that as if they're different persons, because they are different persons. I think one weird thing about IFS is that it's encouraging you to view yourself as pluripersonal, and that it trains your imagination to sort of give voice to these different things within yourself. And I think that the danger of that is that it kind of leaves your imaginal antenna open to giving voice and even embodied action to things that might not be yourself. Like, you can use your imagination to pretend as if it is the angry part of you, or if it's some, childhood memory part of you. I have no doubt that your imagination on yourself, especially under that kind of hypnotic kind of therapeutic environment that IVS seems to do, that can do something. And what's interesting is when I was like, Paul, when you were playing that video of that lady who was actually doing the IFS thing, I'm like, there is something a little bit strangely similar to prophecy that I saw in churches growing up, in charismatic churches. And not just that I saw, I'll even say that I've participated in, because you're basically trying to do the same thing where you lend yourself via your imagination to the voice of God.
Yeah. It's and John and I get into this, but it is, when I watch this, it's like, oh wow, this is a register we use in church all the time. I mean, this is so, I watched it, it was like, this is so at home. We're just in a Christian church, there's a framework that you're living within. And I would argue that IFS as a framework it's living within as well.
Well, do you have an exclusive on that?
No, I think this is deeply human.
Right? I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like the fact that it is used in churches doesn't mean it necessarily needs to exclusively be used in churches.
No,
To the point you were making, Sam, because I completely agree with you, by the way, there's a lot of danger in the therapeutic environment. Things like depth psychology, you would not recommend for somebody who is not pretty well organized already. I mean, so for example, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is one that is, it's become quite well known and quite popular. It just simply doesn't work with certain kinds of people. It works really well with certain types of people and really doesn't well. So like dialectical behavioral therapy is kind of an outgrowth of that for more disorganized type personalities, because they were finding that just a purely sort of cognitive approach just wasn't working. The sort of fake it till you make it, basically. I mean, I'm dramatically oversimplifying, right? So the point here is that ideally these are tools in a toolbox that could be useful in a treatment environment to help somebody cope with just whatever it is that life is throwing in that they're having difficulty coping with. That is ideally how we would talk about any of this, not as some sort of overarching solution to any.
And part of what Vervaeke goes into is, number one, a lot of this is being promoted as you do it on your own, which is like, oh, you mean devotions? And Vervaeke was also very clear. He said, when this sort of gets out of, because what tends to happen in psychology is once it hits the popularizers and it sort of aerosolizes out through mass and social media, he says this is going to be a big mess, which is really fascinating. But it's kind of the same what religion aerosolizes into out there into the world. So, yeah. Mark, I think Mark was next. Mark, did you have something on IFS?
Yeah, well, I think you guys are in the process of trying to rationalize the value of this method, are ignoring the whole reason why Robert Falconer wrote The Others Within Us, which was to air out the unexplainable maybe minority of events that occur within this school of therapy, and that is, what's the word they use? They clinicalized it, sanitized it with some word. I can't remember the word now. Instead of calling them demons, they call it something else, UBs or something. Or who's read the book, the Falconer book? Yeah. So no one else.
It's very interesting.
It's very interesting.
But
he brings up.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, there's also tons of stuff that I have, and I mentioned to John Vervaeke before I became a missionary, a bunch of the things that I was reading about in Brazil and Latin America, he's going into, but he's going into it in a very different valence that I went into it as a foreign missionary.
Right. And I think he's, well, one, he brings up epigenetics, and this inability to talk about imagination cannot explain some of the epigenetic things that he was discovering in his clients. So someone would have he talks about a rat experiment that was conducted where they traumatized a rat using a male rat. Then to the point that he was conditioned to have a conditioned response to a signal. I can't remember the specific signal, but he had a kind of conditioned response to it, and then extracted semen from the rat, so that the rat had no physical contact with female rats. Then impregnated those rats with that male rat semen that had been traumatized. Then found in the offspring the conditioned response in the offspring.
Yep.
Can I respond to that?
And then, hold on a second, and then it went on for several generations. This trait, this epigenetic trait carried on for multiple generations. He extrapolates from that we're finding these sorts of traumas carried out in people as well. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that the imagination, if we're trying to say we don't know what it is, and it is a part of us, Michael Levin's work, I think, is really informative here, because he's really focusing on the collective intelligence within either a single cell or an entire organism. And that collective intelligence is higher than the conscious intelligence of the organism. So if the collective intelligence of that rat learns a behavior, learns something very important, and it's encoded somehow in the being of the rat. And
the problem is you have no mechanism. We have, like, for example, we have like a mycelial layer in mushrooms, right? You see the mushroom, but then it's this massive network that's underground that can stretch for hundreds of yards or square miles, or it go quite big. And but we have no that. And I see what you're saying. You could have a collective. We could all be ants, like operating like ants in a colony, right? There's a collective intelligence that keeps us, that motivates us, that moves us, that we function. But we have no mechanism for that in human beings.
We have no evidence of the material connection.
But Michael Levin's work is that evidence, as I'm saying.
Mean that there isn't a material
Michael
connection?
Levin's work is still electrical.
That's what I'm saying, is the engrams, it's the pattern in the electricity. So the intelligence would be in the electrical patterns, the electrical system of the whole universe,
but
if you really want to expand out.
Electrical systems can be transmitted by sperm.
It's the electrical system is building the sperm.
Anyway, so basically we have material-based theories that we know are true because they've been demonstrated through science, and we apply those to what we're talking about here and say, well, this model based on what we've seen doesn't fit that, so therefore that can't be true. Periodically through time, we always find out, oh, well, the model that we had wasn't quite right. There's actually other evidence that we missed, or another way of looking at it, which does explain this stuff, and we update those models. But yeah, by the way, I am wanting to participate, and I'm just having problems. I need help with my participation. But anyway,
in the name of Jesus. I am not running technical support, and you are eating lunch, so you are quickly into the Andrew Tennant sphere here. All you need to do is adopt a little dog for your icon.
7 generations.
All right, I want to get to Christopher next, because he was next, and then Noah.
I'm trying not to get hangry.
Okay.
All right.
Christopher, I'm sorry, I muted you because you had an airplane.
Overhead now and then.
Okay, there you go.
Oh, okay. Now I'm back. All right. I was just going to say, it was part of what we're looking at here might be that the self is something we can't get rid of, but is a thing, for lack of a better word, that we can't locate.
Right. And that gets into the question of...
I don't get it.
No, you can't. We're not... He's making exactly the same point you were making a minute ago, Steve. You can't locate the cell materially, just like the conversations about, they put human beings on very precise scales at the moment of death to see what the soul would weigh. And so then you're getting into the question of what are the mechanisms? What is the ontology beneath? And that's part of what something like IFS is both. It's showing that assumed ontology is both shifting, and it's being provoked by these kinds of things. All right, Noah.
Yeah, there's a few threads I want to pull on here, but one of them is I think it's interesting to look at IFS as a tool, and we have a propensity to take tools and make them our worldview. That seems to be a very common pattern of. Especially with science, we see that all the time, where it's like, okay, we have the material world, and that is the way we see the world, and there's nothing outside of it. That is it. And the way I've tried to frame this in the past is like, it's an iron box. It's this thing that we hold, and we want to keep everything in it. And then whenever there's something outside of it, we just want to ignore it. But we can never seem to capture what we actually want. When we open the box, it's not in there. It's kind of like Pandora's box in that way. And so one of the problems that I see with IFS potentially is that when you draw these lines across your whatever, your soul, your being, or however you want to put it, you divide something that wasn't originally divided, and you're now you're not fully embodied anymore, right? Because now all these things are, all these emotions are in this one place, and all these other feelings are in this other place. The father can't feel this way, or the child can't feel this way. But fully understanding that you are embodied, you are a full person who experiences all these things. But it can be useful for analysis and working out these things. But again, as a worldview, it can't fit that role that we want to potentially put it into. So
excellent.
Great point.
Really good. Grim Grizz and then CW. I'm sorry, CJ.
No, CW has left us on the 5-year.
Yeah, for 5 years. Yeah, we'll see if he can hold out 5 years. I have my doubts.
I was just gonna come in and be a spirit from above, but then by the time I got here, it was like, this is Legion. When we think of the IFS and the demons, just Christians have to pick a camp because they can't not believe in demons. Because unless they can, I guess there's a third camp where, like, the ones that Jesus cast out were the last of them. There's that option, but otherwise they have to believe that demons are a thing that can be cast out. And you can take the severe blue church option that demons are like things like epilepsy. That's why he said fasting and prayer, because that's how you fix epilepsy, and that kind of thing. That's cool. But if you don't believe in demons and want to, just ask and invite that into your reality, because I assure you, I have met people that carry them around with them, and I think they were installed during childhood trauma, and I think that with what they've done to the children, we're going to have a lot more people have demons installed in them. So get you Christians, step up on that casting them out thing for us, please. That'd be great.
All right. Grim Grizz with his PSA.
Shenandoah Valley of the farm deck.
All right. CJ, what say you?
So I might be a little bit behind on all the IFS stuff, so forgive me if this is ground that's already been tread. But I was thinking about, someone mentioned positive possession earlier, and I was just thinking about times in my life where, because I'm not a particularly compassionate or graceful person, but there have been times in my life where I feel like there is this very deep well of compassion that moves through me. And as Christians, we describe that as the Holy Spirit. And so I guess what I'm wondering is there any precedent in this framework for, like, because we have people asking to identify a part and it says it's a demon. Has anyone encountered something like the Holy Spirit in this framework? And how do we think it would identify, if that, like, does that fit in somehow? Or, and it also just comes to mind, like, I think Paul in the New Testament says something along the lines of, like, I can't remember the quote, but it's the gist of it is that, basically every good thing I do isn't actually me, but it's Christ moving through me. And I wonder if it's all this stuff from above and all this stuff from below, where exactly is the me in all of that?
Right. Vervaeke and I get into this a bit, and because
did you already talk?
Yeah, we talked yesterday.
Okay, is that coming up soon?
I don't know. John's got there's a whole organization, the Vervaeke Foundation.
It's for John's channel.
It's for John's channel.
I see. All right, so give it like 3 weeks.
But one of the things that I pressed him on is part of what you have in church is that, let's say I'm having personal conversations with the Holy Spirit. In a church, I'm talking to other people who are supposedly also having conversations with the Holy Spirit, where we can potentially compare notes and disagree and talk. And you're doing this throughout time too. And so there's actually an entire communal thing in church that gets at this question of spirits. So, and part of the point was, sort of Rod's point. I mentioned to John that as a pastor, I talk to people all the time, and these are not Pentecostal people saying, well, the Holy Spirit led me to do this, or the Holy Spirit prompted me here, or the Holy Spirit said this. One of the nice things that you have in a community and in a tradition is someone could say, the Holy Spirit told me to take cocaine. Well, that might have been some spirit, but I'm a little skeptical it was the Holy Spirit. And but someone would say, oh, but see, that's the problem with religion. There's no agreement. That is a problem with religion. It's also a problem with human beings. So no, that's a great point. And this actually, one of the things I mentioned, John, too, is like I'm at the end of the book of Acts now, and if you read Scripture, often an angel gets sent to Paul. These angels are always popping in on Paul, and it's like, what can't God can't, there's no email, God can't, but sometimes it's the Holy Spirit, sometimes it's an angel. And so part of what happened in Western tradition is we sort of cleared out the middle. You had God and us, and Protestantism very much did that too. And so then if you're
Calvinism did that.
Thank you, Sam. So anyway, so go ahead, Rod.
I wanted to reinforce Noah's point because I think it's a really important point to this topic in particular, which is, we do tend to try to, globalize everything. And now this explains everything. And clearly that's one way to think about this little news event of IFS coming out and getting discussed by this Star Codex guy and all that. Is another way to say that would be therapists encountering their own limitations. Right? Like you have a discipline, you've gone to school, you have a PhD, it tells you that you have the answers, you hang a shingle, people pay you a lot of money, and then you encounter someone who is channeling a demon and you don't want to tell anybody. And so that was all about people starting to admit to each other, right, that they perhaps didn't have all the answers. And that would be how I would take it, is like, oh yeah, well you mistook your modality for a complete solution, right?
That's the point of the Falconer book, really, is that he's trying to grapple with the limits of the therapeutic model.
Yeah.
He's working on the extreme edges of that, and that's what the book is about.
Okay.
Can I say something very quickly, Paul?
Mark.
I think Grizz, again, in his goofy way, really zeroed in.
Goofy. What are you talking about? Those fighting words.
Card. I need a deck of cards. No, he's right. We have to kind of pick a side. I think most of the discussion has been about trying to arrive at some sort of naturalistic explanation for why this therapy works, and probably there are naturalistic explanations for why it does work. But that's separate from what Falconer's dealing with, which he just simply comes to a conclusion that he doesn't have an and I think that's where Christianity, there is another element to it. And to Noah's point, that there is this field of awareness that we call ourselves, and we operate in the world in these animal skins, and we engage with it, but there seems to be a self that is separate from the animal skin. And I can't explain it. I have my pastor's wife, who's also my cousin, seems to have prophetic gifts. She has dreams that come true occasionally. I've had strange mystical experiences, which is why I'm here. I'd be sipping coffee with T. Grog's doppelganger somewhere. Because I much rather reside in the naturalistic world. And when I die, I go to sleep forever, and I never have to think about any of my problems, and I could happily grow hair on my hands with Sam, and not worry about these little miniature details. And, but here I am, I'm amongst you, and there is something to this other world that Grizz alluded to. We have to deal with it. We have to accept that we're going to be mocked by the T-Grogs. Mock away.
He's when a program that's running.
When the time comes, we'll have our little sacrificial experiment, and we'll see whose sacrifice gets consumed by the fire with T-Grog, and it'll all be fine. T-Grog, just keep grogging, man, and but have faith, trust, relax. I'm done. I'm out of here.
All right.
That would go better. That would go better if on the if we're asking therapists to acknowledge their limitations, it would be great if the religious folks did the same. I don't mean personal repentance. Of course, they're going to do all that. I'm saying institutionally, if they would recognize their own limitations, I think it would be a more fruitful conversation.
Yeah, that's a great point. Alex, and then last words on this topic, and I'm clearing the deck and we're switching topics. Go ahead,
Right.
Alex.
So yeah, I was just going to listen, and I've been listening and listening. I just have to reply. So it seems like we people in general throughout the centuries, we seem to forget human nature with these systems, with this new. Remember, psychology is not a new field. We already forgot the lobotomies. All right, the founder got medals, praise, and then psychology also adopted the where you hypnotized. Yeah, hypnotism, that went sideways. We're still trying to figure it out, but we seem to forget the very basics of human nature. Right? We are imperfect people, and I'm going to use my personal experience because I've had experience with schizophrenia, abnormal psychology, personality disorders in my profession and in my personal life. And I've been a mess myself. But the reality of things, the things we seem to forget is that all of us are imperfect people and we're limited, but someone with a PhD, they say something and it becomes law before we even know the repercussions. And we take it in, we ingest it, and we find out later, decades later, a century later, millennia later, and wow. And so this is what I'm saying. Schizophrenia is real. Personality disorders are real. Christianity is real. Miracles, right? Some people say, no, it's poetry, blah, 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 right? But
Land the plane.
Yes. So anyways, that's why I was holding back, because I'm going to sound like a broken record, because it's like the basics of personality is that we're all imperfect and none of us know all the reality that there is. But we have to be careful about the professionals, because we take them at their word and we trust them, and then before you know it, you're lobotomized.
Yeah,
I'm not saying. No, I do believe in therapy. I do believe in that kind of stuff. If you're a mess, the answer has to come from outside of you, because you're a mess. If that's Christ, better. And if there's a spiritual leader within Christ, within mental health, even better. But like I said, the personality component, it's imperfect people. What do you expect?
All right. And it also, when you get ties to government, coercion, medicine, I mean, there's limits to some of those things too. Okay. Any last words on this? And then I'm clearing the deck and we're going to the monocultures of the big boxes. So
I just want to say a final word. To piggyback what Mark was saying previously, is that I think it is a good thing ultimately that we're discovering that the internal world is just as big, if not bigger, than the external universe, and that every one of us is a nexus between the internal and the external, and we don't understand how those two worlds interact with each other. And through all these different methods we're slowly revealing that, and I think the importance of having this kind of community is having so many diverse people who actually believe there is something more than just material and are willing to have a conversation about it. So I just appreciate you guys.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Rod, did you have something?
Well, I surprised myself. I had way more opinions than I thought I did, and I probably have more to come, but I'm going to spare you for another conversation. But yeah, because I didn't quite get where I was trying to get to with that previous topic, but another day. I've taken up enough oxygen for one day.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you, Rod. Sam, final words?
Don't give voice to demons.
Oh, that's a good word. All right. Thank you, Sam. Noah, final word?
Yeah. I think I am probably just maybe more guilty of this than most people, but we all do this where we kind of centralize our point of view and try to make it like the absolute of how you see the world, and you try to fit everybody else into it. I just was reminded of an economics professor I had, where he told us on the first day, economics is so important because if you just knew the economics of everything, you could predict how the elections will go. You could see the whole world as it really is. And I think that's true of everybody who has their field. They're like, if you just understood my field, you could see that we are the ones who hold up the world. And yeah.
All right. Thank you, Noah. CJ, you get the final word on this topic.
Oh man, I don't know. I'm still learning about it, so I don't really have any wisdom to dump here. I think I'm good.
All right, good. All right, we are changing topics again. We are moving on to big box monoculture, big box evangelical monoculture, the church, how the church is being molded by these markets, and then the clergy crisis that both the Father Stephen Domick conversation about the clergy crisis. I watched the rest of that. That was really a terrific video, and I had great respect for how open they were about the challenges that they are facing, and I wish all church hierarchies would be that open about the challenges that they're facing. So I'm going to bring back those who stayed in here, and I'm assuming that y'all wanted to talk on this topic.
Oh yeah. This is the topic I really care about.
Well, you got in early then, Steve. I know Lance is hungry to get in on this. So
I care about all of them, but this video, I paused it, rewound it, and watched several times. The mega monster church things.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts, Steve?
Well, first about the lack of priests in the Orthodox Church. I thought, oh, no big deal. And then I heard their statistics. I'm like, okay, I've been totally wrong about that one. But I need more content in the right now in order to respond to it, because I'm drawing a blank too.
All right, we'll let the other guys go first.
Yeah, thank you.
Lance, I know this is a hot topic for Lance. Probably has a lot to say on it. What do you have to say, Lance?
Hot topic.
Yeah, I'm glad that you watched that whole video. It was fascinating, wasn't it?
Oh, it was
here's
a
the
great
thing.
video.
I went through a ministry apprenticeship program in the late 2000s because the man who headed my seminary was in a Willow Creek model, and he was a Fuller grad, and really he should have been a seminary professor. That was his deal, right? But what he realized was he was sending people off to come into ministry, and they were getting $100,000 in debt to come out and make $25,000 or $30,000 a year. He's like, there's got to be a better model. And so, we went into an apprenticeship model. Now, we did the full systematic theology, Wayne Grudem's, all that too. We did all that stuff. We spent 3 years really in apprenticeship, right? And he also noted, at that time, he noted, listen, this is a problem for the whole church. If you're going to raise people up, and I think he felt like, and he went back and talked about, listen, what was happening in the early days, we were trying to do Acts 2:42 house churches, right? To try and go back to the beginning like good Protestants. And he was like, listen, this is apprenticeship model stuff. They weren't getting seminary degrees in the early church for these priests or these deacons or anything else like that. And so what I loved about, so I love that they were there, and it's there. And Joseph and I are going to actually have a further conversation on that, because ultimately, and at the end where they talk about what's happening, I think it's what's happening in Syria or whatever, is they do have levels of priest, right? And truly, if you know the liturgy, and you're someone, there are lots of men who have been in the church for a long time that know the liturgies and know those things, that have the character, right? Because that's it, the character and the temperament. If they can do those things, there are priests that can do the liturgy, but they can't give a homily. And there are other priests that can then do a homily. And then not every priest in the Orthodox Church can hear confession. And there are these levels to this stuff, and so I just think, yes, it's a big challenge, but it's in some ways, and then with the growth coming in, it's an amazing challenge to have as church leaders, and they'll have to respond to it. But it's going to take some fairly drastic change in how they would do things, and I just think an apprenticeship model for most of what you have to do, because Paul, I think you would agree with this. Most of what you do as your day-to-day work as a pastor has nothing to do with the high theological questions of the day.
That's a huge and difficult topic, because we, especially as Americans, we tend to be pragmatists, and we tend to think, well, we can train these people over to do here. But we just finished this this question, which is a fairly intricate topic of, let's say, IFS and demons and psychology. I think you're right that we're going to see a continual specialization and targeted training. But in terms of questions of deployment, I mean, this is a crazy complex topic. And you're right that we're going to have to train people to do different things, but you're also going to need, see, my question with respect to the thumbnail was, there is actual formation that is happening.
Yes.
And that's a big piece of this. So,
well, and that's why the apprenticeship is important. And again, I talked about character and temperament, right? Because right now, if you can get a great worship leader behind you, and you can give a dynamic sermon, you can build a big church.
Exactly. All right, Nathan, I'm going to bring you in next, because others have spoken, and then Matt, and then Sam wants in too. So go ahead, Nathan. You're muted.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think I'll probably just keep it short. I just thought it was an interesting insight. Also, listening to the conversation, which one of the things they didn't really bring up. I didn't listen to the entire hour and 50-minute conversation about the clergy shortage, but what was lacking was just a discussion of like, okay, sure, you've got this shortage, but there wasn't as much of a discussion of like why people are converting into the Orthodox Church in the first place. Yeah. And not only that, it seems to just belie this lack of connection with the everyday, which they were kind of getting at when it comes to saying, Paul, your everyday is much more focused on like relationship management, frankly, than it is on the high theological topics of the day. And that sort of really comes to the fore as soon as you realize that you have to, as you mentioned, that in an Orthodox church, you may end up paying $20 million in stonework, and what it really takes to actually finance that kind of project. And that gets into the entire conversation about the dynamic in terms of the mainline breaking off into evangelical subgroups that were never as big as the mainline church itself. And so they always lost their buildings, and then they had to, open up in a strip mall. And the mindset at that time was pretty much, listen, if this is what we have to do to be faithful, that's fine. Like, the early church was mostly house churches, it's not about the building, and I think that was like a healthy mindset at that time. But now we're in a position where there's this sense that there's just this sense that when people walk into church now, they get the sense that the church is trying to be like them, and that sort of defeats the purpose, because those people are probably walking into church wondering maybe if there's something there that they don't have. And if they just see a bunch of things that are trying to emulate what they already have, then that's not all that interesting. But I do think there's just a lack of conversation about the practical reality of how difficult it is to build large, beautiful buildings and bankroll them, especially in a day like today where the cost of doing that is so much higher. Just in terms of occupational safety, I mean, the practical aspects of building beautiful, large Orthodox churches is really difficult. And I noticed they just didn't seem to address that a ton. So
interesting.
I do want to point that out, Paul, because I know you've been there. The two churches I go to are two smaller Greek churches. They do not have marble floors. You build what you can afford. And by the way, you can make it beautiful with the iconography, but it's just like, if you're a church with big bucks, you know what you build? A big fancy church. If you're a church that has more simple means, you know what you build? A more simple church.
Yeah. All right. Matt, you haven't spoken before. There you go.
Oh, there we go. I don't want to be. Last time I was outside and I couldn't get a word in. But hey, long time lurker, first time caller. Hi guys.
Welcome.
I guess I have a broader question about, does anybody perchance know about if other, Protestants or mainline denominations are also experiencing clergy crises?
All of them.
I may, I figured that'd be the case. I mean, well, I'm part of the problem. I'm a seminary grad and a ministry dropout. And one of
those two.
And the part of it is not that there's the trope that, like, you know, sin may cause you to lose your faith, and like that's not what me or most of my cohorts have been. But the sorts of like training, the sorts of like theological development kind of ruins us for the domination. Like, we start thinking critically about everything, life, theology, politics, and we don't fit in with the denominations that birthed us. And like, I know so many of the folks that are in ministry right now that would be my peers had I stuck to it, that they basically have to just like claim up and can't say much of anything because they're not allowed to have unofficial opinions.
Yeah. They're not allowed to run other programs. That's what.
No, they're not allowed on YouTube.
Yeah. All right. Let's see who was next. Let's go to Sam and then Michael. Go ahead, Sam.
I'll be somewhat brief, or at least attempt to be. I think that it's sort of like the difference between Android and Apple, where Android is an operating service that can be on multiple different forms of hardware, whereas Apple has integrated hardware and software. I think that a lot of Protestant churches have basically just become hardware, and there are these sort of theological movements, whether it's larger evangelicalism or Young, Restless, and Reformed or Bethel-style charismatic stuff, right, that are these competing software systems, but that they kind of can move into the church hardware. And while denominations used to have integrated building and software, integrated from church to seminary to beliefs, and that your Methodist church could be reliably Methodist. Maybe once upon a time that was true, I don't know. But and Orthodoxy is trying to be this sort of integrated thing now. Catholicism is kind of that, but struggling. But Orthodoxy is, we're going to be the Apple. We're going to have an integrated, software and hardware program.
Are they?
It just works.
But I do think, I think one thing that really needs to be stressed is I think that kind of online podcast orthodoxy is a really big innovation. That is a brand new kind of theology. Yes, it has roots. Yes, it's Christian and all those things. But it is a very kind of new thing. And they're like, oh, how could it be new? We're just reading the church fathers and St. Photius or whatever. Okay, well, the average Russian lady in their church 50 years ago wasn't reading St. Photius. It's new to be trying to dig up all these church fathers, integrate it into this online communicable thing. And there's a lot more Michael Heiser in there than you really want to admit. And like yada, 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 that there's this new kind, like part of why orthodoxy is a new hotness is that there's something very new about what's going on online with orthodoxy, even though it wears old looking clothes.
Yeah. Well, even wearing the old looking clothes is new for a lot of people that have basically been immersed in Protestantism. So, all right, Michael.
Well, so one of the reasons why I, having gone through a Assemblies of God ministry training program and then going to real Bible college, seeing the pros and cons of those, I mean, I think the real issue with this thing is the kind of financial and the economic model and stuff. The parsonage is gone, and churches can't support to pay people to make a living, which is why, you know, I think maybe it's like kind of the negative world thing, you could say, like that the way the economy is going, but you need to find people jobs that allow them to support their ministry habit, I guess you could say, you know, like the bivocational, you know, minister thing. But we just have always done it. I think probably the model just needs to switch, instead of doing it as the thing where, you know, people who just in setting that up more intentionally, setting up the job, the skills, you know, and being established and getting housing first, you know, or simultaneously with bringing people into the ministry, because it's just not a good job to have if you want to have the life that most people want to have. So
yeah, the whole financial thing, and they really dealt with that well in that video too, because a lot of what's happening with ministry, you know, Matt made a great point about people who have dropped out of ministry, but a lot of it is, it's not just, it's also financial. And if you've got someone who's coming in second career, now maybe if they made a ton of money in their first career, then they can sort of maintain a lifestyle in the second career. But if you've basically, like me, I went to college and then I went to seminary. Now, fortunately, seminary didn't cost me very much money, and pretty much my classes paid for my seminary tuition. I just had to work to pay for myself, and I was a single guy. So, I mean, I got out of college and seminary with relatively little debt. But again, that was back before college was as expensive as it is now. So, I mean, there are so many issues that are driving this, and it's economic, it's theological, it's media-based. I mean, this is a hugely complex thing. Okay, Christopher.
One more point I just want to add about that, because, you know, the other problem is the demographics between men and women. And I think that the problem is that you need manly men that know how to work. Like, so I'm saying, you know, the blue collar work, you know, trades is a good thing, but at least, you know, like, so the pastor of our church, he actually got the job because he owns his own software company and said, I will work for no salary, which was appealing to the elders. But like, he can actually relate to professionals in his industry. So if you want to have men, you need your clergy to understand the working world.
Yes,
at whatever level.
That's been a long conversation. Christopher, do you have something to say on this?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think we can solve all the first order problems here by having churches build monasteries again.
You're going to have to look at that monastic model also with respect to, I mean, because basically part of what we're talking about is Christian ministry as contemporary employment. Now you get into monastic models, and then you're going to have to figure out the economics of monastic models, because that question of monasteries and economics. Now, maybe if all of your monks are coders, you know, and I mean, think about this. There's sort of a cachet where we're going to have monks that do wine and beer. Okay, if you're going to do wine in Northern California, you've got a lot of competition. And so on one hand, you're going to sell the chicness of this spiritual wine, and you're going to market that. And now you're back into all of these forces. And because if you think it's difficult to recruit men to be clergy, try recruiting them to be monks.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying it's definitely not easy. It's definitely very difficult, but it would work, I think.
But the question here is scale. And the problem is, if you're going to multiply churches, I mean, and that's part of the reason that certain kinds of Protestantism have grown to keep up with population growth of the 19th and 20th century, because they could scale. And so much of that innovation came basically by having uneducated clergy and just-in-time training.
So, and I want to speak to the Bible.
I mean, then you need to. Well, part of this is like part of this, I think, is like disambiguating education from training.
Yes.
Like.
Well, yeah.
You need to.
But part of the difficulty, part of the reason you sort of craft then I'm going to get Lance in here. Part of the reason you sort of craft it's sort of like what's going on in medicine with respect to the general practitioner or the family doctor. It's really hard to recruit family doctors because they need a broad spectrum of education, and they're not going to make money like a specialist. But the thing is, in ministry, the only way you're really going to make a lot of money is if you're a mega church pastor and you're not embarrassed by the drone footage of your massive home.
Right. Well, you don't need to be focused on making a lot of money. You just need to make enough money.
All right, Lance. Oh,
well,
Mark, did you have a chance to talk yet, Mark, on this?
Can I just wait till everybody's done, and then I have some thoughts, but I'm not sure if they're perfectly in alignment.
Okay, go ahead, Lance.
Yeah, the whole bivocational model, right? I went through a cohort in 2010 by this guy named Hugh Halter. He has this book out. It's called Bivo. So I lived it. I did not get paid as a house church pastor. So I had to go out and make my own money as a consultant and try and pay the bills and everything else. The Bible case, and this was it. You guys even mentioned Bivo in the synod last year, right? Because obviously you're trying to figure out ways you can't afford these pastors, so go out and make your own money. The stress on a family for someone to be bivocational, because you've got 2 full-time jobs. And then the person who can pull that off, really the types of people, Paul, the only people I saw that could successfully pull that off were the 1% guys who could have been CEOs and an entrepreneur and start a business. Very few people have that skill. And I'll tell you, some of your best pastors don't have that skill, but they'd be amazing pastors or priests. This bivocational model is a failure. Now, Father Barnabas Powell makes the joke, and this is the good Protestant preachers make it. The problem is that the church doesn't have the money. The problem is it's in your pocket. And that's true. People are tithing. But people can't tithe because everyone's under so much economic stress right now. And we have all these boomers that are propping up the church now, and they're passing away. The other thing is we have a financial crisis getting ready to hit us, because if you look at the budgets of these churches, it's the boomers that are keeping them alive. And when they go and the younger generation is not supporting their churches, good luck. I mean, good luck. Yep. Do we really want to have a church with great pastors? Do we want to fund them? I mean, we're in a lot of crises here.
Yeah, it is a poly crisis in church right now. And so I was just looking at the Reformed Church in America documents. They lost half of their membership, but only 60% of their churches, which means that what they had left is sort of the Eastern main line. But so many of them, you have 150, 200-year-old churches with 10 or 20 or 40 members in it. They're not even going to be able to afford that building that they are wedded to. And this is in them, it's their system. If you look at their numbers, it's like they're just about extinct. They're just about it. And I know some RCA people are going to be upset at that, but it's just about there. So
could some of the you're talking about be supplemented? Some of these ministers come from the retired older people. Could more older men? I know you don't. Some people don't. Some denominations don't like women, but
doing it.
So the
problem is they're dying, and that's what.
Not retired. Well, I'm not saying retired.
12 years of school.
I'm not suggesting
you don't have to go through so many years.
Hang on, Steve. Let Mark finish.
Maybe they.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting taking retired ministers and putting them in ministry. I'm talking about training retirees to have relatively short ministry careers. But you take somebody who's in their 60s, they could work in ministry for another 10 years after getting some training and bringing them in, because we're in a better position. Older men, or at least older men and older women, are in a better position to minister in ways that young families just can't do if you're putting on $100,000 of debt and everything else. That's
and that happens in Presbyterian churches as elders. It happens in Roman Catholic and Orthodox as deacons, and it happens in a lot of Protestant churches just as lay ministers. And so that's actually a very natural process. But you're probably not going to get a lot of new potential out of that, because it's already happening in a lot of churches.
So you're not going to grow a big church out of that.
It's not going to address really your replacement challenge and your scale up challenge.
I think another thing to remember is that
I want to disagree.
Christianity for a long time really valued poverty and simplicity and sacrifice. And a lot of that has just been lost across the board entirely. And that it used to be admirable for a pastor to be living on way less money than they could doing basically anything else. And that was kind of part of the point, was that's how you had a holy person doing the job. And that was held in enough esteem in the community to attract men who wanted to do something hard.
But what cost to their families, Sam? At what cost to their families, their children and their wives?
I bet that.
And now there's divorce.
Yeah, but I think back in the day, the wife and the children were also kind of on board, and that there is a lot that you can do with very little. And I just think that appreciation for simple living and frugality and all of that has just been lost from so much of Christian culture, and that's a big part of the clergy crisis.
I don't disagree with you, Sam. Like, I knew when I left my legal career to go to seminary, I knew exactly I was walking away from the guy who was going to die with the most toys, right? I absolutely knew that. But there is a base level, like there's just a base level of security that your wife needs. There is a base level that you need to have just in terms, and if you're living in a city, like if you're out in the country, like someone mentioned, you had gardens and stuff. I agree. And in fact, that's why I think the vocational model is better than the megachurch model, because you're not going to get rich, but you should at least be able to feed your family and have some health care.
Yeah, I mean, I think so this is
okay,
something
Steve, say your thing, and then we also have people wanting to get on here. So
yeah, I'll get off. So I got a couple of things to say about this. So the first that I couldn't remember till it came up was the very long path to become a priest in the Orthodox Church, or just the assumption that you need to have a bachelor's before you can even start learning about the Bible and how, like, what the theology or whatever of the Orthodox Church. First of all, like, everything you learn in an undergrad probably just needs to be forgotten anyway. So it seems like the process to become ordained could be probably streamlined and without a loss. And the next thing about I guess this will be the only other thing I'll talk about is the statement of, so the wife needs at least a minimum amount of security. And it's similar to that earlier comment, certainty is a heresy. Security is that a lack of faith, the trying to have security and secure that, as opposed to devote your life to following Jesus and to the church. I'm not saying I'm not totally hypocritical in this circumstance or in this topic, but it's like, I forgot whose point it was, but by being sacrificial, by denying yourself and being ascetic, you're kind of demonstrating to your church, hey, you could be like this and it will be okay. Trust in God. Look at me, your priest who doesn't make any money. But again, that's a tall order. But I also think the sword came to divide people, like who are the ones who are going to have the faith versus the ones who will not. And, I don't know, but I do think that there's a ton of assumptions about how things are supposed to work because that's the way they are working. And then we look into the future based on the present, thinking like, oh, well, it'll never work out. It has for 2,000 years. It'll probably continue to work out. And we're just wrong about everything, just like the apostles who thought like, I'm going to be on the right hand and the left hand of Jesus when the kingdom comes. We don't know what we're talking about. And we just need to have faith.
All right, land the plane, Steve, and you might want to make room. We got some more people coming in. All right, Matt, did you want to? You wanted to say something on this, Matt?
Yeah, I just wanted to chip in a little bit. I feel like the value of pastors being, I guess, poor, living in a state of poverty. If you're in that condition, that's something that needs to be somehow sustained by your community, if not socially or not financially, but at least like socially somehow. And pastors, in my experience, have always been, by the nature of their job, kind of pushed to the fringe. They're on their pedestal, or they're other from the community. It's like all of my friends that are in the work. It's a pretty lonely, alienating, isolating job. And the more that we're living in a atomized culture, I think it's harder and harder to pull off a pastor that is both financially on the bottom and also just left to his own devices. I
know a story of a pastor who decided that I've dealt with pastors like this in the CRC that said, I'm not going to have a pension. But then let's say the pastor's a success and is beloved in his ministry and esteemed for his sacrifice, and then he retires. Suddenly the community has a crisis because they don't want to see a homeless pastor. And medical, I will tell you something, the cost of medical care and the cost of retirement, these two issues have basically disrupted platforms. Now, the Roman Catholics, to a degree, have this built in because they have celibacy and because they have clergy with communal living. But I will tell you, I remember when my father, Northside wasn't doing so well, and he didn't have YouTube. And so he was looking at going bivocational, and he was in his 50s, and he's like, it'd be really good if I got up in the morning and got a little exercise by being a garbage man in Patterson. And most of you don't know what Patterson looks like. And I said, Dad, if you are running behind a garbage truck as a minister in Patterson, all of these people who know you and know you to be a minister, first of all, they're a little shocked you're not driving a Cadillac. But secondly, you would shame the money out of your church, because the last thing, they would lose status seeing their minister having to work as a garbage man. And it never came to that. My mother got a job. But that's another point, that most pastoral couples are now 2-income couples, and the wife is subsidizing. And I'll tell you, this whole conversation, boy, I could do an entire YouTube channel on this conversation, because it is chewed on forever in churches. So, Alex, you wanted to say something? I think you were next, and then Chad, and then Sam, and Christian.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Matt.
So I want to incorporate the problems about every year they're going to be in a worse spot because it's shrinking. There's not enough Orthodox priests. And also the carrot and the stick problems. I'm going to try to merge both of them, and I'm going to try to make it quick. So the problem with both, so 20 years ago, when I was going to a youth ministry led by the priest, Catholic priest, he was concerned back then, and they had to pull him out of retirement. He was like 85 years old, very wise man, but he was concerned 20 years ago. The problem hasn't gone away. The problem has gotten worse, and it's going to continue to get worse. So, and I'm going to try to make it short. So here's where I'm going to springboard to my next comment. When people get desperate, or organizations get desperate, and as a metaphor, the medical industry has had problems like that too, but they started getting creative. So the doctor, 8-year gig, wow, they're short. It's worse. They did the numbers, it's going to be terrible. So what happened? You have a nurse practitioner able to practice. You have a PA able to practice. And here's the problem though, we still have a shortage. And then another problem, people are having less kids. Oh, future, more problems. Now, here's the carrot and the stick problem, because I said I was going to make it short. In Catholicism, when you had priests come and go, you couldn't really have as good as relationship. And some said, hey, that was the problem. It was like too much shenanigans. But anyways, I went to the priest with a question, and I was expecting to get somewhat of an answer. And basically, I walked away saying, well, that was not an answer. I had ever heard, because my whole life was Catholicism, and it wasn't much, but that's all I had. Somebody told me about 2 Thessalonians, and I'm like, have you ever read it? I'm like, no, never read it. Well, in there, it talks about something about the lawless man and this and that. And 1 Thessalonians, I didn't know what they were talking about. Okay, I went to the priest, and the priest says, I'm gonna have to do some research, and because I don't know what I haven't heard that before. And he went somewhere else because he was needed somewhere else in another parish. I never got the answer, but I'm gonna try to make it short. When I started doing my own digging, I didn't find, so if he would have given me an answer, I probably still would be Catholic right now. But I went and I started searching on my own, and what I discovered was like, what? Right? The Inquisition, what? The popes, what they were doing, and how the Machiavellian book about the prince and the Medici, and then the other pope's son, Pope Alexander, the stuff that they were doing, and no wonder the Protestantism, they were giving the mass in Latin, the Bible was in Latin, they were killing people that wanted to read the Bible in their own language.
Gotta land the plane, Alex. Bring it to a point.
Yeah.
Bring it to a point.
Right. So my point is the carrot and the stick. Sometimes when you try to fix something, you create another problem. Sometimes when the solution is the solution, but it creates a new problem. And we're not having kids. That's another problem. But yes, God is very creative. He will find a way. But anyways, that's what Like,
Amen.
yeah.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. Sam.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Just thought I'd share a quick story that maybe would highlight the shifting realities we're facing. Visiting an Eastern Orthodox monastery down the road, happened to be at a liturgy, and part of the liturgy, the priest came out all the way into the like kind of lobby area and then went back in, and I was like, hey, why did you do that at the end? I was just curious. And the priest described back in their Rokor church back in Russia, lots of times these villages would have the whole community come up at that point of the service and drop off gifts for the priest to then disseminate back into, mostly to the poor. There was some that was used for the church. And it seems like we're experiencing significant shifts in culture, empire, etc., from the roads to automobiles moving things around, to this increasing sense of like the pyramid of Babel sort of like getting stagnated. I don't know, like getting more solid and less like we're all kind of, I don't know, fighting for less, I think, in terms of money. We're just a little more, we're more debt ridden than we ever have been. We're less economically, financially, personally frugal and sound. So there's a lot. Obviously, we've been discussing that, but I thought that story would help.
Yep. Amen. Very
Thank
true.
you.
Polycrisis. Christian Baxter, someone who's got some experience in and out of ministry. What say you?
What say me is you pointed on it with your story about your dad and the trash, like thinking about the trash job. People want to look at the guy teaching them as an example for life.
Yeah.
And that's part of the mega church culture. That's part of like, I don't want this guy just to teach me about godliness. I want him to show me the good life, And so you have that image, and what that is that's that's a little bit bastardization of the American dream, that type of thing, or whatever you would call that, an adoption. But then you also have the issue of the idea that all I really am getting from this guy is a lecture, and I want to pay for the best lecture that I can get. Our culture, has been in the modern sense not really interested in actual spiritual care until it's time to get buried. And so, but the rest of the life, just give me the information that I need for the good life. And so I think that the value for the pastor, for the preacher, is for the preacher, and that we have to also find more value for what we want, what we need from pastoral care again, and that is what we're trying to support. That's what we need. That we need spiritual care, and we have distilled that into a sermon and some songs in a large portion of American culture. And so spiritual care, looks something like, I saw it illustrated by Nate Hiles' Priest when I was at Symbolic World. There were 4 of us sitting around and talking about 11 o'clock at night outside the convention center, and a homeless man walks up to us. And what do we all, okay, does anyone have $1 or $2? And it kind of made the moment feel like, well, this is probably about the time we need to end our conversation and go to bed. But you know what the priest did? The priest pulled out his oil and he prayed for and he blessed this man. And we all need that. And that's actually more of what we need than another great sermon sometimes. But I will say we also need the education. And I think that's also been, there was a little bit of like, just get them up there with the Bible attitude, and that's, and we all know what that leads to.
I'm sure you've seen that. I've seen where that goes.
Yeah, we can listen, Paul. We can find a preacher. Paul, we can find a preacher. I know somebody that can preach a real good sermon. So I
maybe
think
they can.
Right, but the education, the history, the practice is all important, maybe there are better ways, cheaper ways that we need to really consider culturally to develop that. But people are looking for an example more than they're looking for spiritual care in our culture. That's all I
right.
got to say.
Okay. Thank you, Christian. All right. Last words.
Yeah, the last thing I just wanted to share is, from my experience, my dad, he did not set out to be in ministry. We were at a small church. The pastor left, and he filled in, and because he was of the people there, he was the most qualified to do it. And then he ended up staying there for 25 years. The church never got above 50 people, but it was a great way to grow up. And whatever the ideals you're looking for, there's somebody worse. And if you're focusing on them, then you're doing God's work. So, people just look around and see what you can do to make the situation better instead of endlessly speaking about it online.
All right. Thank you, Michael. All right. Here you go, Mark. You got the final word. I'm closing the stream at the
All right.
half past the hour. So.
All right. Sorry to encroach on your lunch.
No. I got to feed the dog lunch. I usually skip.
Poor puppy. Two things. First is a question is because this is why I wasn't sure if this really fit in the topic was, is there any aspect of ministry that we ultimately can't do here in the corner? When you think of all the things you do in ministry, short of, well, even visitation of say housebound people, because we're both virtual and we are doing things locally more and more. That seems to be filtering out.
That's a really great question. And I've been surprised over the last number of years how much we could do this way. But I will also tell you that there's something when you go to someone's home, what you learn about their relationships, about their economic context, about their values. When you walk into a house, it's an enormous group of context signals that can tell you a lot about a person. Even though we can learn a lot about each other through this means, physicality remains so much deeper in terms of the amount of information you can actually get. And then if you sort of know what to look for, that's why when doctors stopped making house calls, I would argue medical care got a lot poorer, because if my doctor came to my home and opened my fridge, let's say, the doctor could say, all right, well, now I see what you're eating.
Or smell the cigarette smoke, for example.
Exactly. So no. But all of these issues are really important scale, because there are some times that a good friend can be more important to you than a trained minister, but there are other times when a trained minister is really important. I mean, because I'm always bumping up into, I've got a certain level of education, then I've got a level of experience, and then I've got a lot of self-education after that. But the world is so enormous that I am limited by all of the constraints in my life, and those constraints, give affordance, but those constraints also give limits. So these are terribly. I mean, I deal with these questions all the time.
Well, we do have a local arm. Just to be a slight pushback on what you're saying, when you think of estuary.
Yep.
And this now, I'm going to pivot into my prayer request, because I thought I was the only one who got the hiatus message. And
No. Everybody's getting the hiatus message is.
See, and this applies to what we're talking about, but also I think we do need to pray for CW, and because for me, I have a soft spot for him, because he was kind of the first person who was still nice to me in the TLC when I was being difficult, when I was T-grogging, and so I do, and he reached out to me. He was I would shocked when somebody said, let's trade phone numbers. Trade phone numbers with somebody on the internet. Took me a minute to kind of, okay, and it worked out. And then he's kind of had this, he's experiencing this whatever it is. And I understand need a break. Maybe he just feels like his boundaries are violated or he needs to regroup or something. But I would like to keep praying for him. But to the actual, like what you would do in a case if this was a local church, is we would send a couple elders, deacons, friends of the congregation out to his house to knock on the door and say, "Hey, everything okay in there?" And we actually have that, of course, and I think he's Minneapolis. I don't think I'm saying anything out that nobody doesn't know.
Minneapolis is a big place too.
And we have, that's true. But we have a Minneapolis wing of the corner. And so, pray for him. And then maybe that's what I would, for somebody like that, would spend a couple people out that can check on him. I hope that's happening. I'm in California, so that's not realistic. And I think he's not receiving my text because I sent him I've been sending him random little notes, and my text went funny. I sent it and then it just disappeared from the screen. So I think I'm blocked, and I don't want a restraining order.
I don't think he's blocked me. But this is a whole nother conversation too, because one of the funny things that often happens in churches, if someone stops showing and you show up at their door, they accuse you of stalking you sometimes. Because I mean, this gets into so many things. But no, you're right. And part of what I noticed with the online is that this also gets to the scalability thing, that there are people in the community who are sort of durable caregivers. And CW is one of them because he really cared for people and he would follow up with people. Some people are waiting to be followed up with, and if they're not followed up with, they're hurt. Other people are really don't want to be followed up with because they value their autonomy. And if you follow up with them, they'll accuse you of stalking them, which is a super frustrating thing if you're in a position to try to maintain a community, because people don't even know themselves if they are someone who is waiting for a follow-up or if they're going to be offended by a follow-up. And then there's the group that you follow up with them and they basically bite you, but then 3 years later they come back and say, you followed up with me and that was really a good thing because I really needed someone to follow up with me, but then I bit you. And it didn't physically bite me, but
Right.
that's what happens when you get to the door and they cuss you off or give you the finger or something like that, which happens.
Right.
So, but
It's
no,
just
that's good.
It's so sad. It's just like he was so invested in this for a while, and he's throwing money at you for and sometimes I thought he was being funny, and now I feel like, boy, I misinterpreted the guy or something.
People are super complex.
They are.
People are super complex. And it's also the case, and this is where YouTube is a lot different from church. Churn is a really big thing on YouTube because maybe it's just a gift or pastoring. I go through comments and names of different accounts stick in my head. And I won't always notice if someone disappears, but I will notice if they circle back years later. This is one of the things I learned from my father because he was in his first church 36 years. And some people are sort of like in orbit around a church. They're sort of like Halley's Comet. And some will be here every couple of years. Some will be here every 7 years. Some will be here every 20 years. And that's even more true of YouTube, where it's a constant, they're trying to game you in terms of your attention. And so then people will be in and out. And this is part of the reason why Peugeot and Vervaeke both said, I'm not here trying to start a community. Because if you tell people at the outset, I'm not starting a community, people who already feel like they're part of a community, it's sort of a defense mechanism and say, hey, that's on you. You felt attached to me, but I had no obligation towards you. And what you're pointing at is that part of what has developed here is a degree of obligation with one another. But then you also, because in church, you run this stuff for your whole life. So then you run the program where, okay, someone pulls back, someone in church approaches and say, hey, we miss you. What's going on? And they're receptive to it. And so then it goes deeper. And then you find out that this person had expectations. that first the church wasn't meeting. And then someone comes in and they're like, oh, now my expectations will be met. And then the person begins to really invest in trying to help this person. And they discover that there's no helping this person.
It's
really.
too much.
It's too much. So then they pull back. And then the person that chased them feels sort of bitten because they were expecting to have this fulfilling spiritual, relational, communal experience, and they got dumped on. Sometimes they get yelled at. And then
a lot of emotional maturity is required on everybody in this game. Yeah.
You bet. And in YouTube, it's even worse because, and this is where we get into this thing, how much do we really know each other? Now, Chad's been super good at this. Like when he did the denim dinner, because all of that sort of opening up the aperture, letting more light in, letting community, but the more you open it, the higher the stakes, because everybody's also dealing with an economy of relationships. And they're like, this is the level of relationship I can manage. This is the level I can give. This is the level I can receive. So human communities are super complex. But no, Mark, I really appreciate what you said here. And I also I've been thinking about you, and I almost made a video about what you said in the 29 hour stream that you just alluded to with respect to CW, because what you said in that stream, now it's not up, so I can't sort of pull out the clip, but now I got you here. You made the comment that you were reading the chats and feeling like you're the only progressive here. And the truth is, there are a lot of progressives here. There really are. It's just that these little sub-communities in the community develop, and they develop their own antibodies. And so the chat tends to be a certain group of people. And then part of the problem is that people are like, well, this is a community for neo-trads or, whatever category you want. And the truth is, this is an astoundingly diverse community, but they're not all equally distributed on all the signal senders.
Yeah.
And that's what you discovered with CW. And I think this is part of CW's frustration, is he has exactly the same frustration, because he often hears signal. And then people, I caught Christian Golden's little live stream the other day, and he was talking to, I forget who he was talking to, but he was making the point that, Paul, the non-denominational Pentecostals or Assemblies of God are at the bottom of Paul's hierarchy in terms of church value, which really isn't true. But it's super hard for me because we listen for signals that we are attached to, and so then with all of this social war stuff between progressives and traditionalists, it's so easy for, and a number of people, it's so easy for someone who feels himself progressive to say, there's no place for me here. Then the challenge is, and this is why we have Estuary, then the challenge is, okay, how many title pools can we actually create?
What's the limit?
And how then can we sort of feed them? And what I've really liked in the channel has been like the proliferation of channels, so that if you're sort of on the perennial aspect and the mystical aspect, there's Grail Country. Mm-hmm. If you want to hear a social warrior, go over to Federecci. He'll give you some red meat.
Well, the funny thing is Federecci, Mr. Jacob, who I got his attention when I threw out the gauntlet, about Calvinism. Yep. I don't know if we'll ever get to the Calvinism, but we're becoming friends.
Yes.
And he helped me kind of launch my initial channel thing. My first attempt. Before that, my only YouTube video was a cat video from years ago. And then he helped. So I simulcast on 4 channels, 2 of mine and 2 of his, and he's very much of one political persuasion, and I'm very much of a different one.
Yes.
But we're developing a friendship, and that's what's great about this corner, and that's what I think, and I think that's what Clara touched on.
Yes.
The Grib.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
It's beautiful, and it's going to change the world. It's her, and I want to take her as a prophetess.
Wow.
And I think she's right. That's what she said. In fact, if you watch my last video, that's what I've centered my whole little video on, was that little clip from that interview. It was brilliant, and I wouldn't underestimate what can be done, although the goal here has to be made clear to anybody who might feel threatened by what's happening by this corner. Because I can imagine some pastors of small churches being threatened by this, that they might get replaced, or they might feel like we would be sucking time away from congregates that would be better spent in their local congregation.
Yeah.
I'm imagining. Maybe I'm just making up a problem in my head.
What's the name of your channel?
It's Mark D. Parker. At Mark D. Parker is one, and the other one is More Nuts Than Bolts. Okay. And that's the one. It's kind of a backup channel that may become the primary, just because if I do something that I don't want to do something that get me completely banned. So I kind of have two channels. So
no, but you really hit on it. Now you got a new subscriber. I'm subscriber number 16. You really hit on it though, because what people, I'm not going to bring in Steve, because I'm going to land the plane when I'm done with Mark.
The puppy needs feeding.
Yeah. But you really hit on it, because people will listen to Federecci and say, oh, he's this conservative culture warrior. And he is. Jacob is also one of the most powerful pastors. Now, he's obviously not a Christian pastor, but he shepherds people. He has a heart for individual people, and he loves on them. And he's kind of prickly in his own way. And, he'll say things to me online that people are like, and you still talk to him? You're still his friend? And say, yes, I'm still his friend, because he has an enormous heart for people, and he cares for them. And he's actually super flexible in some ways. I mean, he has financially supported my church, and it's like, it's just, but so many of us are these contradictions, and you're exactly right. And that's really what this space is about.
You've done something remarkable, or the Lord has through you, Paul. So but you listened and did whatever is in you that allowed you to put this together and let it grow. Is I think attributable to God, but also attributable to your spirit, as how you are incarnating Christ in your lifetime. So I think you deserve some credit. I know you probably don't want to make you blush, but I think you deserve. I wanted everybody to take a victory leap with that little observation by Clara.
Yeah,
because I think it's you,
absolutely.
It's this community, it's these long-term active people.
Yeah.
Chad, our elder statesman, Jacob, all you guys. I mean, I'm a newbie here, but I respect what you've done and what you're doing, and I see just endless potential for now. And but anyway, feed the puppy. God bless you, sir.
All right. Now there are 10 gifted memberships, Steve. Steve, did you get a membership?
I am unable to figure out how it works. And I worked in the software industry for 15 years and developed all sorts of different sites and intranets for companies, things like that.
Well, I'd
so
say
it's not like I'm lost on this. I'm Gen X.
Yeah.
But where's the button? Where's the thing?
Well, at the bottom of all of my notes, there are links to click on to join the membership. So try that. You can do it offline.
Yeah, I could just pay for one.
Yeah,
it's not like I can't afford it. It's just I've only been frustrated because it's like, here's the thing, and I'm like clicking, and it's like, well, there is no thing. So whatever. It might be I use Elon Musk's internet, and he may have like banned it because he's like, I don't want these bastards to make any money on my platform. I have no idea. And I also know like how I know how these kind of systems work. So there's very likely my bandwidth is just not allowing that stream to go through the tubes and whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I love participating in this because it's like,
I don't know if ecumenism is the right word for it, but it's just the like we were just having the love fest in the chat. It's all of the different denominations and different perspectives with a little bit of teasing, but mostly loving and listening and trying to understand. And as someone who, like, I need help with my unbelief, a dude like that to come in here, you know, like leave the atheist books in the boxes in storage, and I'm pulling out the Bible and buying a whole bunch of new books about Christianity. I need to not be shunned and shooed away for my heresy before I even know what I believe. You know?
Exactly, because you don't even know the heresy. You're. I mean, and you need a space to grow and to try and to find, and that's exactly what I want for this little corner. What I want for Estuary. So
yeah.
All right,
I
Steve.
mean, the conference sounds cool too, and if I haven't missed my chance on that too, I'll get a campsite.
Oh, I'd love to meet you in person. I'd love to meet you in person. All right.
Yeah.
I've got some new branding today. I've got Dog Bark and Chemo and Freddie and Old Sack, and Chemo's playing his flute. And I'm going to start that, and that's where I can kind of power things
one
down.
request.
All
One
right.
request. Put the dog in the branding too, because dogs are awesome.
Dogs
if you
are
can,
awesome.
one
It
day.
isn't my dog. So actually, there's even with this
Well,
company that I have
pixelate
the
his
dog
face. Pixelate his face. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Bye.
Steve. Bye-bye.
Your body is moving, do it hip hop beat. Open up the Bible, you will see. Amen. Jesus is God, like Tennessee. Amen, Jews. On the mic, Timo cuts loose, and God we trust, and Dave Barker, flannel. He's wearing flannel. He might be on a #1 mantle. Do. We do it tight. Game tight. That's why we got it going out of sight. Amen, Jews. God
From this lonesome town.
Bye.